young man speaking in the city square, trying to tell somebody that he cares. Can you blame the voice of youth for asking what is true? Yeah, the ones that you're calling wild are gonna be the leaders in a little while. When will the lonely voice of youth cry, what is true? This our world's waking to a newborn babe, and I solemnly swear it'll be their way. You better help that voice of youth find what is true. And the lonely voice of youth cries, what is true?
All right. Well, welcome. Boy, I love that. We're gonna we're gonna do a culture war thing. I know I have a video on this that I did before with much the same theme. We've got our Sampel here, ready to go. And then, of course, a bunch of Sampel in our excellent mug that you can get at my store, shop.markofwisdom.org. We've got some junkless cinnamon roll for later. Yum. Because, hunger. And get some tea from the Table Rock Tea Company. We're going with Westminster again today. It tastes delicious. Really good stuff. Yeah, so I'm out of culture. Thanks, Nick. I sometimes. Oh goodness. Yeah, I'm gonna start out with some sort of tale here. We had some engagement from the lovely Emma on the Discord server today in particular, but she's been on and off all week, which has been lovely to see her. Met her in person at Convivium. You may know her from the Father Eric open mic night streams. And yeah, she just posted some random thing she was trying to get some distributed cognition on. And I won't go into what she posted. It's not that relevant, but it gave me sort of this insight, right? Which was, and it may not seem connected, but we'll get into this. This thing that I talk about, middle out thinking, which I have a video on, sort of is tied up with this objective worldview. And you sort of start in the middle of the story, right? And then, because you're here and like everything is either before or after you, right? You're not all that involved, right? Because you don't have a lot of control of the world. That gives you this objective worldview. Well, I'm kind of apart from the world. And that sort of creates this individualism and also leads to this binary thinking, because everything's either me or not me, it's left or right, right? And that's kind of the point, really, is these things are tied together. This objectivism, this individualism, right, are tied together with this binary thinking, with this objective worldview, with the whole concept of being a neutral observer in the world, as though that's a position that can exist in the world. Like if you're in the world, you're not neutral. Everything's kind of connected. And that plays into this whole idea of the culture war. Because we think we're individuals, or we think we can be an individual, and I reject that flatly. And in order to try to understand the world, reduce it to binaries, which is the lowest possible resolution frame you can have. If you're familiar with the Jordan Peterson, he talks about low resolution frames, and maybe we need those, but also when you're doing that, maybe you shouldn't believe that you have an understanding, right? If you think politics is left and right, you're not understanding a lot of stuff. And so, culture war? No. It looks like a culture war, sure. But no, it's an overflow of cognition due to the flood of information. There is no culture war, but it sure does look that way. Like I agree. But think about it. Right? What we have in the world are all of these competing worldviews. You can't even track all the worldviews. I certainly can't. The better way to think about it is a war of ideas of individuals and how they want the world to work, not how the world works, not how the world has ever worked necessarily. Maybe their idea of how the world used to work or something, but that's not necessarily accurate. They weren't in the world at that time usually, so and maybe not how the world ever could work, just how they in their fantasy basically. And look, I mean, we've talked about fantasy before, right? I mean, I have a whole live stream which covers fantasy among other things, and that's how they think it works or how they want it to work, how the world should work in their mind, right? And this causes a couple of problems, really, at least two, right? So one of the problems is that you get the impression that you can work this stuff out for yourself. You can understand some significant part of the world or something. And you probably can't. The other problem is that you get overloaded with everybody else believing the same thing. Like, oh yeah, I've got this worked out, or this part worked out, or whatever. I understand how politics works. Okay. And so either they're challenging your ideas, we either ask you questions, right? Oh, tell me how this works, or they have competing ideas, right? Where they think they've worked it out too, but they're not the same. And the result is a flood of information. It's a flood of stuff we have to work out. It's a flood of, quote, knowledge, right? It's a flood of worldviews. It's a flood of all these ideas and ways things work and ways you can put things together and how they interact and all these complicated things. We all have exceptions too. Like, wow, the election would have gone this way except for, magic thing happens, right? And some of those are probably true, right? But maybe what they mean or what that person thinks they mean is not. So this causes an overflow of distributed cognition. And let me try to demonstrate that overflow. Let's say there is a political machine in the United States, right? Call it egregore, right? The spirit of the country or whatever. Hyperobject, called political machine. It doesn't matter. So what if that distributed cognition, the political machine, the political system, is worried about the perception of a group of people, a public, we'll call it, a group of people, that it does not live here, does not live in the United States. So they're worried about the public perception of the US to people overseas. And that's what they're worried about. Now let's suppose that there's a limit to that cognition, like what that political machine can handle. Because I think we all have limits, right? We all have cognitive limits. All systems have limits, right? Corporations can only move so fast, right? Products can only be built so fast. Things can only be sold so fast. Shipping takes time. There are limits to things. So they're spending a huge amount of time on public perception overseas. But what if that's too much? What if the number of publics to deal with, like overseas, there's too many varying cultures, and so they just can't do it? I mean, what if the political machine can't even manage the perception of the US to the people in the US? That might be hard enough. And maybe they could if they weren't trying to manage the public perception of the US to people who don't live here, because there's a lot of people who don't live here, far more than do. So maybe that's just misspent cognition on the distributed cognition side. And who knows? Like, I'm not making a claim that that's happening. I'm not here to give you answers, right? This is not the place for answers. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm not trying to do that. So we all have cognition, right? We all have limits to that cognition. And like, I'm just going to say, like, my cognition is different from your cognition. My cognitive ability is different from yours. Could be good, that could be bad. Doesn't really matter, but it's different and it's limited. It's two things. There's a limit. Those limits are different for different people. Distributed cognition, there's a limit, and those limits are different for different distributed cognitions. And they, quote, care, right, about different things, or they orient towards different things. They aim at different things. So kind of keep it in mind, right? Too much information which needs to be processed is causing this problem. It's a flood of information. We are told that we can do things that we likely cannot do. And I'm not saying that we can't do any one of them individually. But how many of them can we do? And can we do those individually? Because maybe we can't. You know, maybe somebody told you you could read Plato's Republic and understand it. Maybe you can't. I don't know. I can tell you right now, a lot of people don't. And maybe they were told they could, and maybe they tried, but they clearly did not. That video is coming. Slow going, I know. But it's worth thinking about this. Like, we're forced to process all of this cognition, our own and others, and we can't. It's limited. It's worth thinking about that. It's worth taking that seriously. What does it mean? How do we deal with a limitation like this? It isn't optional. There's some limitation here. We have no control over it. We probably don't even know what it is. People are constantly telling us you can be anything you want to be. No, you can't. That's a lie. Maybe it tells you that they're lying. They're lying. Immediately lying. Lying. Don't believe them. Lying. Don't know what else they're lying about. They're definitely lying about that. Probably lying about other things too. Can't do anything. You certainly can't do everything. And maybe you can do some number of things, but maybe not. Maybe you can only be good at one thing. I don't know. But it's possible. I don't know you. I know some people who can only be good at one thing. That's for sure. That might be you. I have no idea. I never met you. I don't know how many things I'm good at or could be good at. I have no idea. That's why we need feedback from other people. We outsource our sanity, as Pastor Paul Vanderklay says. And that's the thing. We don't have a handle on our cognition and when it's overloaded and when it's not overloaded. And it's got to be overloaded in sort of all time frames, to Sandy's point. Like, in the day, you get overloaded. By the week, you get overloaded. By the month, you get overloaded. In a year, you'll get overloaded. People talk like this all the time. Oh, I've had a rough year. What the hell does that mean? Usually it means cognitively they're beat up, whether it's emotionally or mentally or however you want to parse it. It's all part of your cognition. And we have a sense for it. We have an intuitive sense for it. And this cognitive overload problem because it's a problem. It's a non-optional problem. It's something you're going to run into that other people are also running into, and maybe they're not even aware of it. This is why John Vervaeke's relevance realization is so important. It's a good observation. Peterson makes a similar observation. He doesn't call it relevance realization. We have limitations. What do we pay attention to and what do we not pay attention to? And maybe if we try to pay attention to things we cannot cognize, we cannot understand, we cannot be knowledgeable about, we blow our brains up. It's worth thinking about. Could be true. And I would say it's evident and obvious by observing the world and even just observing yourself, but also by observing other people and realizing you're pretty much like them, at least in that. So we need a way to filter it out. What should we pay attention to? What should we cognize? And what should we ignore? What should we leave to others? Because we can't do it all. We might be able to do anything, although I object to that. But even if we could do anything, we can't do everything. There's a huge difference. So what things that we can't do we leave to other people, even though they're flawed? And we're flawed. In schools, they used to focus on reading, writing, and arithmetic, as they say, right? Because the theory was the rest can be pretty much derived from there. Like once you have that baseline, you're pretty good to go.
The rest is used to refer to all the parts of something or all the things
I have
that
no idea what just happened.
or that you have not already mentioned.
Electronic spy devices, no doubt. So what sorts of things happen in school? You're supposed to get a basic education from which you can derive more. Now, I'm not saying that reading, writing, and arithmetic are all that you need to learn. But what if that plus one other thing is all that we'll say the average person can learn? And what if you then add 3 or 4 things and try to teach all of them in a school? Perhaps you destroy their ability to understand any of those things. That's a problem if that's true, and I think it's true. And what about that overload? If you overload someone's cognition, what are they learning of the things they should learn? Maybe not enough. I don't know. I'm not an education expert, although I do have a video on education versus training, which you should watch because it's great. And comment on, because, But it could be that by teaching people too much, by showing them too much, by giving them too much information, even just in the news or in the newspaper or online or whatever, that you're destroying their ability to cognize as such. That their ability to think is being eroded by the flood of information. Does this describe anything you see around you in the world today? Because I think it does. And what is the most important thing right now? Is it women's rights, civil rights, social justice, immigration crisis, the war in Ukraine, the war in Israel? A civil war somewhere in Africa? There's always at least one or two. Or is it the plight of the Palestinians? Or the plight of the slaves in the slave market in Libya that didn't used to exist? How about gay rights? How much time, energy, and attention do I place where? Are these even valid things to think about? Are they valid values? Should I value social justice over civil rights, or women's rights over the war in Ukraine? Or should I value the war in Ukraine over the war in Israel? Where do I put my time, energy, and attention? And how much of it do I place with each? Or maybe social justice is the worst possible way to frame anything ever, that and effective altruism, which I can prove, by the way. I'm not going to do that here. But do you know? Have you thought about it? Does anybody realize that the idea of social justice is insane? There's no such thing as a society without justice. Justice in some ways defines a society, and justice doesn't make any sense without society. Like justice on a desert island can't exist. It's a bankrupt idea. So some of these things aren't even valid. They're not valid ways to think about the world, and yet we've all had to think about them because somebody's brought them up, but then we've had to deal with it. In my case, I smacked them around verbally and explained to them with logic why they're being dumb and they shouldn't think about that. But that's still exhausting. And even just the way we think about things is the right frame to view the world politics, or is everything and everyone driven by economics? Or do we make the decisions that we make, are we moved by the information that we get? 3 bad frames, by the way. Just a little hint there. And then how do we fix things? We don't even have a good problem definition anymore, as John Vervaeke points out. You want to fix a problem, you get a good problem definition. Sure, good science right there. Do we change the people in charge of the information we're pushed? Who authorizes what information goes where? Is it the algorithm? Is it that nice objective neutral algorithm that doesn't exist, by the way, and cannot exist, cannot ever exist, by the way, cannot ever? Do we just elect new politicians? Or do we try to alter the way economics works, whatever that would mean? Get rid of capitalism maybe, or change people's minds on communism, or invent by smashing together terms, new words like anarcho-capitalism or what? It's foolishness. Or do we change how people are educated? And then wait a generation. Or just have everybody hear a certain message. Like once they have the gnosis to knowledge, right? Once they listen to a certain person, which message, which person, which rationale is correct or more correct? Which frame is right, true? And sure, look, I have my own views on all this. Obviously, don't we all? Yes, that is the point. That is the problem. We all do. And maybe we all shouldn't. Because we're all polluting each other's, I've got an idea, with our idea. And they're polluting their idea with theirs. It's a flood. But then we find people who agree with us and we say, hey, I'm not the only one that came up with this. I'm pretty smart now. But what we don't do in that case is take more seriously that we are all ill-informed, incorrect, fitting a pre-existing narrative that we didn't even know we had. We lack humility. Instead, our egos grow. We feel validated, our views vindicated, because someone else who, hey, they seem pretty smart, coincidentally, isn't that convenient, has the same idea as me. Wow, we both must be onto something. And since we are both onto it, it must be real, because it's not just in my head after all. It's not just my fantasy because someone else has the same idea. So it can't be fantasy because it exists outside of me, does it? Or is it just that you both have the same idiotic fantasy? Am I describing the world around you accurately? Do you see what I'm saying? Have you noticed any of this at all? Anywhere? Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, Styx Hexenhammer, Curtis Yarvin, Carl Benjamin, Daily Wire, Dan Bongino. Who do we listen to? What do we listen to? Why do we listen to it? Do we know why we listen? Do we know why we find attractive, what we're attracted to, what draws our attention, what shiny little thing is shining out? Do we know why that shiny thing is shiny? Do we know what shininess is? Is this a culture war? A war for one view over another view? Isn't a culture the way in which we as a group attend to the world? How we cooperate together? How we manage shared common affairs? How we operate independently but towards the same ends or similar enough ends, as imperfect and stupid and useless and cognitively bankrupt as we all are? Not just the attention, but the framing. And of course, postmodernism comes into play here. Of course, I have a video on that. We don't have common frames. We're told we can just pick a frame, and Moby Dick can be a treatise on the lesbian experience. And while there is a way in which you can twist Moby Dick into being that, that doesn't make it valid, doesn't make it real, doesn't make it realistic, and it doesn't make it helpful. I'm a pragmatist. It has to work outside of my head. Things that work inside of my head are a dime a dozen. I have ideas all the time. They're all perfect. Every single one of them. It's beautiful. Beautiful place in my head. You should come visit. But culture is really the common virtues and values, the common aims, the common orientation, because aims alone won't do it. The definitions we use in common towards the common frame to manifest common meaning. Right? Postmodernism is uncommon meaning. It's unique meaning. It's individual meaning. But the common meaning has to have, at least partially, the aim and the proper orientation of revivifying the culture itself. Otherwise, the culture can't perpetuate. Then you don't have a culture. That's why too much diversity is not strength. That's crazy talk. And isn't that what I'm talking about? The splitting apart of this commonality? These competing ideas? We can't have competing ideas. Not at this level. You can have a few people saying, hey, maybe this piece is wrong, or I see flaws in this piece here. They have to have common goals and common orientations and common aims. Otherwise, they're just rebelling. They're just destroying. They're just wiping things out. We are not in a culture war. We're not in a culture war. I have a video on this. We're in a fight to have any culture at all or no culture. And hold on before you object. Please give me a moment to explain something important. This is not a battle for culture or for which culture. That's a wrong way to think about it. This is the battle of good and evil. You see, the thing is, evil doesn't care if it's the corrupt agent in charge of the culture or the structures or the institutions, or it's driving the boss on authority and leadership inside the culture. It's fine with that. Obviously, evil's like, hey, we can drive everybody to more evil. That's great. We'll use the culture to do that. But evil also doesn't care if you tear the culture down and destroy it under whatever means. Like, oh, I've got an idea that we'll all worship Gaia and we'll be climate people. Evil is happy with that because that leads to chaos, clearly. And evil still wins. Evil doesn't care. Evil's like, dude, I'm playing both sides of this game. Deck is stacked. Let's do this. And what does this mean? Like, how do we make sense of this? It means we need structure, institution, leaders, and authorities. We need culture, but we need goodness in it. We need good people running structures, coming up with structures, running institutions, coming up with new institutions, being leaders, being authorities. It has to be good people. And they're rare. Not everybody can be a good person. Sorry, I hate to break it to you. Most people can barely be decent in the day. Some people can't even smile. Think they're going to be good people? Come on. We need good people with virtues and values in those structures. Doing away with them, tearing them down, ending them means evil wins. And you think you're going to replace them, or they're going to magically replace themselves with some emergent bottom-up magical thing that's going to be better? No, that's almost certainly not going to happen. Can happen, but you don't want to bet on that, and it's almost certainly not going to happen. Those are two different statements. Yeah, something can happen, sure. Technically, according to physics, no, really, you can walk through walls. You can walk through 3 feet of steel intact as a human being. Now, it would take you so many attempts to do that before it was successful that it's absurd, but actually physics says that is perfectly possible. But also bad plan, right? Sure, goodness from the ashes of the culture we destroy, or the structures we tear down, or the institutions we annihilate. But the odds of that happening are so low that I'd rather not try. So don't end them. That means evil wins. Doing nothing about calling out evil means evil wins. Yeah, no one's calling me out. I'll keep going. I'll spread. The minute you don't call out evil, it spreads. The minute you don't call out fraud, it spreads. Nassim Taleb tweeted about this the other day, I believe. If you see fraud and you don't say fraud, you are a fraud. Yep, I agree with him. That's correct. Without ideals, without virtues and values, and without agents attending to, paying attention to higher things, orienting upwards, acting, taking actions in organizations, within structures, in the world, outside of themselves, actual actions that affect the rest of the universe, right? Evil wins. Evil wins. It wins. And I'm not a fan. I hope that was sufficiently long and sufficiently short. And after a moment, I will double check on my comments here. I know I didn't kept a slight running tab there, but I need a better setup to keep a better tab. Also, there are probably limits, so I'm probably doing the best I can. I'd like to think if I had a better setup, if I just managed the material better, my cognition would improve. That works sometimes to some extent for some things. I support this, Hanselman. Me Hardy's splice the main brace and roll out the Sam Pell barrels. I'm totally going to steal that. Ahoy, Spatch. Ahoy. Hanselman, we'll have to get your enhanced definition of individuals. We are persons. We may be each individual and unique, but we are not individuals. Overload, hallucination. I think that's the word of the day. Yeah, well, you should check out that live stream, Sandy, on hallucination, because it was quite good, if I do say so myself. I think that's part of the problem. We get lost in this inability to understand what is hallucination, what is fantasy, what is our imagination, our imaginal realm, and what is not. Those lines get blurred for us, especially because we're told we can do anything. And as far as I can tell, the only way you can do anything is in your head. It's not something you do outside your head. Do you have definite lines where you say no to the overload? Of course. And of course, your overload varies day to day, varies minute to minute, hour to hour. You can do crazy things. You can link it to the glucose cycle. You can link it to the circadian rhythms. That actually works pretty well, actually. Hangry is a thing, right? Oh, you're being angry to people for no reason. Have a candy bar. Yep, that works. Doesn't work all the time. And someone learned to spell arithmetic. Yep. Reading, writing, and arithmetic, the 3 R's. Wrong. I'm here now. Start from the beginning. I don't think so. That's not how this works. Go double speed and catch up. Pardon me, my nose is not happy. There, it's better now. It's itchy as hell, too. I want to saw it off. I think that would make it feel better. Nathaniel, you finally stated an affirmative ism out loud. Pragmatism, yes. Well, pragmatism is very important. That's the most important thing. Interesting that you personify evil. What is your definition of evil? Sam Harris, that's one. There you go. Sam Harris is evil. He can't avoid being evil. It's not possible for him to avoid it. Personalize. Well, I could go into a bunch of people who are definitely evil. I experienced my evil on Monday. Evil I was not prepared for. I was not expecting spiritual warfare in a mediation, but that is what I got. Aaron, why are good people being filtered out of institutional leadership? They're not. They're wimps, and they won't go there, and they won't take the sacrifice, right? You can say, look, I don't want to be in politics, but I want to manipulate politics without being in politics. I have some sympathy for that position, for sure, but also, really? Why? What is the sacrifice that you would be making by being in politics instead of trying to manipulate it from the outside? It's a good question. Again, I'm not saying that's invalid or that you shouldn't do it, but it's worth to ask the question, why not just jump in and make it better? Even if you know you're going to fail, I think that's where the problem comes in, right? People go, I can't do that. Okay, maybe you can't fix it, but is it better with you not there? So wonderful. I think it was a TED Talk, as much as I hate TED Talks. It was actually a really good TED Talk. I'm pretty sure it was a TED Talk. This guy was using marbles to describe immigration and what would, I guess, thereafter was called reverse colonization or something goofy, right? Where the U.S. in particular is guilty of this, right? We will take the best and the brightest from any country. We don't care. The problem is, and the guy pointed this out beautifully, the marble illustration was just gorgeous. Those people leaving their country, let's suppose you're like the smartest physicist in your country, and you leave to be in the U.S. because better materialism in the U.S. than anywhere else. I think that's safe to say. Maybe not better other things, but way better materialism. I mean, we do materialism so much better than the rest of the world. Aren't you depriving that country of your stuff? I mean, you can't, maybe you don't have enough resources to make as great a contribution to physics if you're not in the US. That's totally fair. But maybe your country is so deprived that they go down and we go up. And the US is okay with that. You know, I'm not going to come down on that either way. Nathaniel's two-way street. The institutions aren't holding up their end either. The institutions don't have an end to hold up. They're bigger than you. And the fact that they're not doing that doesn't mean tear them down, because then no one's holding up that end and you don't have that institution and something's going to fill that vacuum. And let me tell you, it will be evil almost every time. Is that what you want? Do you want something broken that can be made good, or nothing that will almost certainly become pure evil? It's up to you, dude. Like, you know, I know which way I'm voting on that. So you can whine about a two-way street all day long, but things bigger than you don't owe you anything, but you owe them everything. That's another thing to think about. It's another way to think about it. Like, oh, those things are bigger than me. Like, definitionally, they're just larger. Institution is a group of people, and therefore one person is always smaller. They can be smarter, maybe. I doubt that, but maybe. But it doesn't matter. Institution's still bigger, right? It's a trade-off. It's a necessary trade-off. It's not an optional trade-off. So you can whine about the alleged social contract, which is a bankrupt concept, all day long, but A, it ain't there, and B, it don't matter because you ain't on the negotiating side anyway. Which really sucks, by the way. Really sucks. Sandy, different definitions of what is meant by good people. Well, yeah. Usually meaning they match institutional goals. No, goodness has nothing to do with institutions. Goodness is way higher than institution. That's the confusion. People have reduced the world because they've been told they can understand the world. You can't understand the world. You're a Muppet. I'm a Muppet. We're all Muppets. You can't understand the world. You can't understand part of the world. I went over this last week, right? Like, I thought I had a pretty good handle on the history of the computer industry. No, I was missing a whole bunch of stuff. It's like a whole bunch of stuff. Still chewing through that damn book. Like, what does it mean? We all used to lease our computers? All of them? And not even computers, like the early mechanical computers. Like, they were all leased, all of them. What? And now we're going back to a leasing model, mostly with software. But also, you could argue cloud is leasing hardware. Yep, it is. We're going back to the computer leasing model. Wow. And there are some advantages to that. Like, it's not all downside. Cloud's absurdly expensive and no one should buy it, but different problem. I didn't know. I had no idea. So if you're matching goodness to institutions, you're already way off the rails. And if someone's doing that, they're lying to you and they're wrong. They're probably lying because they're wrong. I don't care why you're lying. I'm a pragmatist. The reasons for your lying, whether it's for your ignorance, your inability, your incompetence, or your maliciousness, is irrelevant to me because the result is the same. I can't know your motivation. I can't know whether or not you're ignorant or malicious. There's no way for me to know that, at least at first blush. There are ways to determine it with a lot more incidents, but I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter why. You match it to institutions, you're barking up the wrong tree. Aaron, culture war equals culture versus anti-culture. Yeah, roughly speaking. That's the argument I made in my video, my original video on this topic. And that's the thing. Nathaniel, two-way street doesn't mean shooting anything. It's not a two-way street, dude. A two-way street implies equality. There's nothing equal about it. It points to cooperation. It's not a cooperation. It's not. It's not optional, for one thing. And things bigger than me in the past are much smaller in the present. I don't know about that. I don't know where you're getting that from. You can say that institutions have different sizes over time or different influences over time. That's really true. It's true of everything. Everything changes in size. If you were a baby once and you're not anymore. And you might be having many of the same qualities as a baby as you get older. Happens to most of us. Sandy, why are good people being filtered out? They're not. Because the definitions being used are filtering them out. No, it's because they're wimps. Look, I will make the argument. Yeah, I guess I'll make the freaking argument. Screw it. If you're a good person and you have to use deception to get into the organization, do it. Do it. This is that Lindsay Shepherd, I think was her name. Peterson had her on, years ago, right? She maybe illegally recorded a conversation that she should not have recorded, but it saved her career. And she was being bullied and misused by evil people. And she stood up to them and recorded the conversation anyway, which might have been against the rules. But I don't think it was in any way unethical or immoral. If someone's doing something bad, you should record them and show the world. Absolutely. Especially if they expect confidentiality. Why are you expecting confidentiality? What the hell do you have to hide? It's a good question. I already went over that too on Monday. Won't make that mistake again. Not sign any confidentiality agreements for your negotiations. Negotiations are going to be in public, where everybody can see what a reprehensible piece of garbage you are, how much you lie and betray people. Just saying. Nathaniel, cinema is bigger than religion. No, it's not. Nothing's bigger than religion by definition. Not even close. Not even remotely. Not even within the ballpark close. Some people are taking elements of cinema, like Star Wars, and making them into a religion. Sure, I would call that a cult. It's a baby religion or insufficient religion. That would be a cult in my book. We've talked a lot about that. We think that's correct. There's a lot of people working on stuff like that on the Discord server, on the Mark of Wisdom Discord server. We get a lot of input. Like I said, Emma was very enlightening today by accident. Quite by accident. She wasn't trying to do that. She's trying to work something out for herself. But that's how we get better, right? Sandy, I'm going to go back to my writing and then pass out. I'm about 4 channels over trying to track here. Good night, Sandy. Good luck. Ethan, participation in goodness never fails. That is true. Everyone has a unique opportunity to participate in it. Also true. If you're concerned with failure, you're not concerned with goodness. Also true. You are concerned with its effects. Yes. Well said, Ethan. Man, you've been on fire lately. It has been awesome. It's been a pleasure to read your tweets. And yeah, you've been doing just bang up job, especially in explaining some of these things that are sort of difficult to understand. And people have a hard time with, to be fair. I have a hard time with. I think there's a lot more people at their cognitive or over their cognitive limit than we'd like to admit to. There's a lot of people that are just overloaded, overwhelmed. So, you know, it's good to look around and realize, hey, some of our heroes are, you know, maybe they're not able to rise to the occasion because they're suffering from cognitive overload. They have limits too. And do you know what your limits are? Maybe don't worry about their limits. It's sort of worth thinking about. Like, oh, wait a minute. There's a flood of information. Everyone's drowning in information. What do you do? Maybe you decide to fight the WEF with a new organization that's going to counter their narrative. Not a fan. Thought it was a questionable idea to begin with. Art conferences come out. Didn't watch most of the talks. But I did watch Jonathan Peugeot's talk at the Art Conference. It is fantastic. It is the best talk ever on any topic in the history of humans. It's great. It isn't what I would call skepticism, but it's a healthy questioning and curiosity grounded in some really good observations about the world and how the world is and how the world should be. Which is to say, we should live in the world as though we can't understand it, and therefore with a little more humility, instead of saying, oh, the WEF plays this game. Maybe we'll play the opposite game. The WEF never had a chance of winning the game they were playing anyway. Their things are ridiculous. Their concepts are stupid and repugnant to most people. Understand that they have a big signal boost. And I understand that that is a problem. And I agree that that is a problem. The way to fight it is not to counter it. When you counter something, when you identify against a thing, as the Art Conference is very much doing, you are captured by it at the same time. That is why atheists can't do without Christian framing. It's not possible. They're captured by it. All right. It is core to their identity because they're identifying against, they're not identifying for. You can gin up the idea that because these billionaires are playing this silly game called WEF, that you need to play a silly game called Ark all day long, but I don't think you do. I think you could take that time, energy, and attention and put it towards better use elsewhere. I'm not here to tell you what that better use was. Nobody asked me, right? But I'm just saying probably it exists, that better use. That's the problem of the, quote, culture war, right? Like, oh, there's Peterson diving into the culture war. And it's like, what? Why? What's he fighting for? Human flourishing? Ooh, that's a tough one. What the hell is flourishing? What's human flourishing? If I'm a human and you're a human, do we have the same flourishing? Because if it's not the same, it's not a common goal, then we're screwed. Guess what? We're screwed. I like this sentiment. You can't thrive on mere negation, right? You can't. By definition, you're destroying. Look, you have to destroy to create. I get it. I'm not a positive, only creation, only construction kind of person, obviously. But also, you can't only destroy, you can't only negate, you can't only identify against. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. It's not a good thing. And you're using up your valuable, limited, just as your cognition is limited, time, energy, and attention. You're using up your limited cognition, using up your limited resources. And you're not building something positive by definition. That's what identifying against is. We're going to build an organization for civil rights. Well, what are civil rights? Well, let me tell you what they're not. What? To build an organization to fight the WEF. Are you? What are you fighting exactly? Why are you fighting them? Why don't you just put out better ideas? Don't even mention the WEF. Who cares about a bunch of billionaires who have a lot of money? And sure, economics can, everything influences everything else, right? Economics can have an influence on the world for sure, and it's going to. And the thing is, nothing you do is going to change that. That's the terrifying part. Like, if Bill Gates wants to buy all the farmland in the United States, you're not going to stop him. There's nothing you're going to do to stop him. Sorry, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's not realistic. But you also don't have to. Like, there are fights you don't have to have. I have a video on that too. Now, I can't remember what it's called though. But it's about games that you don't have to play. There are plenty of games that you don't have to play. You don't have to engage in them at all. It's just not necessary for you to get involved in those things. And we don't know that, right? We think like, oh, there's a game out there, I have to play that game because I grew up on video games. And absolutely, like, of course, like I absolutely have to do you have to do that? Are you sure? I don't know. And we're overloaded with this stuff. Everything is overloaded. And it's hard when we're overloaded. It's really hard. Because we do think, we're like, oh, okay, well, I've got an answer to something. But actually you're just overloaded and fooled by being exhausted into believing that this thing is a thing, that you can go ahead and engage in it, or that you should, or that you have to. Maybe you don't have to. Maybe it's a trick. Because I think that's the problem with cognitive overload. which is, again, we're living in cognitive overload land. We're stuck in this cognitive overload, ridiculous level of cognitive overload. And we have to simplify the world to kind of understand it. And that's materialism, is a simplification of the world. We simplify the world. We have to. So we have to understand something about it. Nathaniel, I've implemented real world problem solving in my life and relationships in profound ways since engaging with this channel. Oh, that's good to hear. Shifting from information to wise action was the key. Glad to hear that. Yeah, wisdom, intuition is a better way to deal with most of the problems of the world than knowledge and rationality and logic and reason, which most people are illogical, unreasonable creatures that don't have the ability to rationalize. And they think, we've been told that we do, and we're just not logical, reasonable, rational creatures most of the time. Nathaniel, I wanted to add a positive here instead of just challenging. Thank you. I do appreciate that. Yeah, it's good to exemplify the positive. We have very little of that lately. And we need more of it, right? And look, if you guys want to join in, feel free. This isn't like a solo show forever. So feel free to join in and ask questions or whatever, or do it in the live chat. Feel free to consider that you're a Muppet, like I am. And that's good. It's good to be a Muppet. It's important. It's important to have that level of humility. We all have to recognize our limitations, especially in cognition and our participation in culture. Like, how much control do we have over the culture? And look, if you want to think about the world in terms of a cultural war, that's fine. And as I've tried to explain to people many times, if you believe there's a culture war, right? If you think that's the frame, that culture war is a valid way to think about the world, you're in it. You ain't got no choice. You're part of a culture, one way or the other, and therefore you're automatically part of the culture war. Is that a good way to think of the world, as though you're at war? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe you have to. Like, I'm not going to make a judgment here. I'm just going to point out, like, if you think there's a culture war, then you're stuck in a war, dude. And now you got to figure out which side you're on. How many sides there are. The way people talk about culture war, man, that could be a lot of sides. How many cultures are there? Are they all fighting for the same thing in the same way at the same time? I don't know. It's a weird frame for me. Ethan, materialism is a simplification of the world. Yeah, it's a way to simplify the world down to material cause or formal and efficient cause or something, right? Collapsing Aristotle's four causes down to like one. No, bad. Ethan, this person shot up at school because mental health, which is chemical imbalance in the brain. Exactly. It's a good example, right? That is a material cause, right, for something that explains everything, allegedly, but it's a simplification, and it ain't not that simple. Like, mental illness is so new that now they're shooting up schools and they weren't before. Like, I don't know. And interestingly, probably overall, we have fewer mentally ill people than we have in the past. So I don't know why we have allegedly more school shootings, although I don't know if that's true either. Everybody always points to it because now we have a flood of information. Anytime there's any shooting in any school, anywhere, we find out about it. And the flood goes two ways, right? It's not just the amount of information. It's the number of times you hear the same information over and over again. Sometimes you don't identify that. You hear about 2 different school shootings, but really it's just one. Did you hear about that school shooting? Which one? How many did you have to think about? How many are there? Can you even keep track? I can't. I have no idea how many school shootings I've heard about. Just, and then, well, how many have you heard about in the past year? Oh my goodness. Like, that's even harder to track than how many I've heard about my life. What are you doing? Now I have to have a cutoff filter? Like, that's a lot more cognition. And then you're going to ask somebody that? Like, are they going to know? Are they going to give you the best guess? How accurate is that going to be? But yeah, any material only cause is a ridiculous oversimplification. And that's part of the problem. We're cognitively overloaded. We have to reduce the world to material cause at some point, because, and maybe we need to be careful with that. Like, maybe if we just take in less of the world, we don't have that problem. And look, take in less of the world to be less overloaded, in your cognition. You have to trust an institution. We're a structure. We're a leader. Or an authority. And they're going to get it wrong sometimes. But A, you might have gotten it wrong too, so who the hell are you to judge? And B, too freaking bad. There isn't a better choice. Acting like there's a third option there is ridiculous. There is not. Oh, goodness, Nathaniel. Really? Yuval Harari. There are some levels of evil I have little tolerance for. He's right at the top of my list. And I watched him set up a binary while ignoring the third option. Excellent. Let alone the fact that there are so many more. Good point. There's often more than 3. Prepackaged ideas and binaries sell in sound bites. They're easy to understand. And boy, Nathaniel, I would love to understand that new thing. That would be great. It'd be awesome. Like, whatever crazy, ridiculous, large frame he's talking about, imagine if he could just simplify it for me, which is what he did. It's a trick in some sense. It's also not optional. Ethan or a priest, right? Well, a priest is an authority and a leader, hopefully. And they're going to get it wrong. But if you try to do it yourself, you're going to get it wrong too. You're not saying anything at a certain point. But sometimes they get things wrong. Thanks, genius. You're saying people aren't perfect. Thanks to the update, Captain Obvious. It's like, people say that. I'm always so blown away. I'm like, really? I would never have guessed. I've never been wrong about anything. Like, what are you saying? Why are you speaking at that point? No kidding. Really? Shocking. They put on my shocked face. Like, wow. And yeah, when a leader does it, when an authority does it, when a structure gets it wrong, and it has horrifying effects. Yeah. I'll take all your better options, of which you have 0, by the way. I'll take all the 0 options you have. Oh, look, there aren't any. They aren't better. They're at best the same. At best. It's even if you have one, which you probably don't. I know I've told this story before, but somebody on Twitter was saying, I just want all the Twitter data unfiltered by the algorithm. And I was like, you don't even have I don't even have a conception of what that is. I almost know enough to know how ridiculous it sounds. It's just the Twitter feed. I forget the number because it was too large for my brain to conceive of. That was amount of data per second. Like, what are you going to do? You're not going to do anything with, like, come on. You can't even manage your emails. You want to manage the Twitter feed? Come on. Get real. Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Nathaniel, he was pitting historical facts against his conspiracy theories. Hey, there's lots of ways to do that stuff. That's the thing. To me, pardon me for a sec. Man, if I had a knife and I could cut my nose off, it's one of those days. Sometimes my nose gets super itchy. The thing with those things is, I don't know if I could do it any given day, but I could walk onto a stage and just come up with that stuff off the top of my head all day long. It's just, most days I can do that. It's not that hard. Not for me. lots of people can't do it. I get that, but I could just go like randomly. I could just pick a random topic, like, I don't know, the juxtaposition between, we'll say, the French Revolution and now, right? Like, how are they the same, right? And I could say, well, look, the Robespierre of today is Bill Gates, because he, with his push towards WEF, is trying to topple the local governments, right, and behead the bad people. I could say that, and that's silly. But like, you can just do that. It's not that hard to do stuff like that. And I have a lot of respect for people who can do it, because not everybody can do it. I just don't think it's that hard. So it's like, yeah, okay, like I get it, but also don't do that. Like, just don't do things like that. It's not good. It's not good. Ethan. People confuse the particular authority with the form of authority itself. Exactly. A catastrophic mistake. It is indeed. And there's a lot of negotiation there, right? Like what form the authority takes versus who's in that role, right? And like a person doesn't fit a role perfectly, and a role doesn't fit a person perfectly. And often when you fit a role to a person, it doesn't work out. And sometimes it does, though. Sometimes you should. These are not easy things. Like, we just think like, oh, obviously. None of this is obvious. Speaking of not obvious, Jesse.
Welcome to the Muppet Hour of the Pirate Stream.
The Muppet Hour is here. Let's see what Nathaniel says, rather. Ethan, I think that's what I did a few minutes ago with institutions. I still got stuck in the materialism frame. Yeah, the materialism frame. Look, man, it's a simplification. We need simplifications to understand the world, especially if we're trying to understand it by ourselves, like idiots, because that's retarded. Like, stop trying to understand the world. Just stop. Stop trying to understand part of the world. Like, you can't keep your emails straight, and you want the Twitter stream? You want to criticize the YouTube algorithm? I'm not saying nobody. Like, I'll criticize YouTube algorithm all day long, but then again, I'm an expert in algorithms, among other things, but algorithms in particular, and I can just tell you a bunch of stuff about it. Like, man, I blew up the Twitter algorithm 2 weeks ago by mistake, and I was like, oh, I should have seen that coming. But I didn't. I've written algorithms that do stuff like that, and I just totally didn't think about it. And I basically effectively double posted a link to the live stream for last week. It's effectively it's not really what happens. Effectively what happened from the algorithm's perspective, it's what it saw. My engagements dropped. Boom. In some cases by 50%, in some cases by 75%. It's hard to tell. Like, there's no way to tell how much it actually, like, what would this tweet have done? Would it have done 2,000 views or 1,000 views? I don't know. All of my other tweets were doing about 1,000 views, and now nothing's much over 500. It's like, I screwed up. And it's my fault. Like, I should have been a little more careful, I guess. But I was also trying to promote the channel, which, Sally. How things look is the subject I could talk about indefinitely. You looked at the translucent nature of grass lately. You looked at its hairs that are in exact lines. Yeah. Well, the problem of perspective and detail and awareness and attention. Those are all problems. Remind me later, Sally. Maybe I'll come up with one or more videos on that topic, because, yeah, you could go forever on just awareness and attention, much less perspective. And because perspective is actually different. Perspective is how you place how your awareness places your attention. Yeah, it's tricky. It gets nasty, because there is it's the constant game I'm playing with. Ontologies are bad, but there are ontologies, right? And their relationships aren't nice, sharp, the way they are in ancient Greek philosophy or we'll call it recent day science. But man, it's also it's a bad way to think about the world. Sally, or lighting. Yeah, or lighting. Freaking interior or exterior or cloudy. Well, yeah. We were just talking about this today. I was talking with Ginger Bill And he said, oh, I have a north-facing window in my office. I said, I have a north-facing window in my office. Who likes north-facing windows? Artists. Why? Because you don't get the same level of high contrast sunlight throughout the day, right? The sunlight's more or less equal. It's less variant. And photographers, I'm a photographer. Photographers, sunny day, no good. Why? White balance. Long discussion on white balance is impossible. But anyway, like actually technically speaking, impossible. What you want is a gray day with very even light. And actually, I just realized I've been going through a bunch of old stuff for reasons that make me angry. And I found a bunch of pictures I have of Harvard Square. And I was like, I'm a good photographer. These are brilliant. I love these. And I'm mostly a perspective guy. Like I'm not as technical, which is just hysterical. I'm technical and everything else. Not technical with the camera at all. I just because I ignore it all. I'm just lazy. I like taking the perspectives though, to the point where I'll prefer an outside perspective to a person. So I'm actually, unless I know I'm taking a picture of a person on purpose, I will actually prefer the view and screw up the person. But I have all these beautiful pictures of Harvard Square on this gray day. And I remember distinctly, I remember when I took those pictures, it was gray. And I went, today is a great day to take pictures. And then I was like, I'm going to go to Harvard Square and take a bunch of pictures of Harvard Square. It's going to be great. And it is great. And at some point I should probably publish all that because yeah. Nathaniel, talking a perspective is tough for a people-pleasing Muppet. Yes, because you want to prefer other people's perspectives. And then you can't compare and contrast perspectives. When you have a preference of perspective, and I'm not saying that that's avoidable, I'm just going to point out that when you have a preference to prefer other people's perspectives, it's hard to contrast because you're already having a preconceived notion, right? Sally Jo, can we change how people feel about electronics by if the plastic is matte or glossy? Well, yeah, they do. They manipulate you that way all the time. Sally, because the matte plastic has won for whatever reason. Yep. I think matte plastic is more friendly because it looks more like skin. Yep. Well, it looks more real. Like glossy plastic is obviously nothing in nature is like that, really. There's a few exceptions, but glossy leaves, but they're not flat. Glossy plastic tends to be flat. Glossy curved plastic is always fascinating too, to people in general. I've noticed that. Whereas glossy flat plastic is not, because it's not natural enough. So we can't relate to it in the same way. So matte is more relatable. It also goes back to last week's live stream on poetics, right? There's more things to be attracted to find things in a matte finish. That's why all my walls are matte and not glossy. Just saying. Yeah, and not that I don't prefer some gloss, and in some places I prefer more gloss than others, but the matte finish to me is way better just because there's more to grab onto for your eye. It doesn't slide across it as much. Notice the words I'm using very deliberately. Also, the words everybody else would use, right? How's it going, Jesse? How you doing, man? Good to see you.
Australian heat wave here. It's
oh no,
it's brutal. Yeah, cook eggs outside with no heat. That sort of level of heat. Yeah, not good.
I'm all in.
Where do we want to go with this culture war analogy? War for culture, war against culture. I know you've mentioned that. It was actually maybe we'll start here. We'll generate something here. I was watching someone break down James Joyce's Ulysses, and man, if you wanna get a deep dive in what the modernistic push for Gnosticism was in the 1920s, it's right there. New language, divorce rates, ethnic group integration, and glorification of the mundane, and domicide, loss of home. All there in one text. And it was
James
banned
Joyce.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. James Joyce in general, though, yeah, he's a slippery character. He's a very slippery character. Yeah, he sort of blew up a bunch of things. Like there's some postmodernism right there. Not acknowledged by most people from what I can tell, but James Joyce, dangerous man. What was his first big text that wasn't Ulysses?
There's Finnegan's Wake, but I think that's after Ulysses.
No, there's a seminal text that he has that I can't even remember off the top of my head. I wish my brain were working better today. My brain's tired. It's been a long week. Yeah, it wasn't Ulysses. He has another sort of seminal
The
text.
Doublers? The Doublers? A portrait as an artist as a young man. I think you're... Yeah, portraits of an artist as a young man. The other.
No, I don't think that was it.
There's
Maybe
the
it was
Dubliners.
Ulysses. Maybe it was
He
one
also
of his
never once
lesser-known-
he got kicked out of home, he never returned back to his country.
Oh,
which is-
really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, there's another thing that's happened over the last, I'd say, 100 years now. It's
And there's
2020.
the domicide.
19 Yeah, domicide again. So,
Well, and in the past, you'd get kicked out of your house, but you'd go to live with your aunt.
Hmm.
And then you look at the story of like someone like Nikola Tesla, right? Who the reason why he was able to do what he did, the way that he did it, was because, and I don't know if you've seen the, because we have this theme. This theme happens over and over again. It's not a well-known theme, but Tesla gets kicked out of his house, right? Well, not kicked out of his house, but he gets drawn out of his house because he's too smart to be where he's at. And they know it. They're like, no, he's got potential. So we can't afford to take him to school, but his uncle will pay for it, sort of a thing. Right? It's that whole idea. Because that was very much the way things used to work. And like everything worked that way up until like the mid 1900s. Literally like up until the war. Up until the end of the Second World War, which is where the individualism can flourish because wealth spread out in a way that it hasn't been before, right? And we don't think about that, but that's like a big deal, right? It's like a really big deal. And so you look at something like Good Will Hunting, which is the same theme. Right. And it's the exemplification of that, but really it's weird, right? Because it's kind of backwards, right? On the one hand, they're like, no, we need you to leave. And then it's like, but we don't want you to contribute to society as a great man. Right? We want you to leave and go get the girl and start the family.
Yeah.
But it doesn't quite make that point well, which is interesting. But it's the theme is there. It's one of the things that makes it one of the best movies ever made by far. By the way, if you haven't seen Good Will Hunting, everybody should watch it. You should watch it a million times, a billion times, a trillion times. Doesn't matter. It's a great film, and it's actually that concept of you're too good to be here, right? Or your potential could manifest more in the world better if. And that movie is just all about the fight there. Because at one point he's like, "No, I just want to stay here with you and like clean up construction sites where the hell they're doing." And he's like, "No, dude, we all want you to leave." And they're not making a decision there about we want you to leave and go to MIT and be super math guy, or we want you to leave and go chase the girl to California, I think it is, or whatever. Doesn't matter. But we don't want you here stuck with us. Like, we want you to manifest your potential. We don't care which potential, just don't stay here. Don't hang out with us. We're a bunch of losers. And they're not, right? They're those are the people holding the world together.
Yeah.
And it very much is too, because that conversation, that they're having is very much, we're here holding the world together so people like you can do what you do. Whoa. And that theme is there in that movie. It's one of the things that makes it a great movie. It's also a sneaky movie because you don't Until I tell you, you don't even recognize it. It's right there. It's right there. Rounders is another good Damon movie. He's in
Is
a
it
lot
the-
of good movies for some reason.
Is that the card one?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
gambling one. He wrote Good Will Hunting though.
Mm.
He went to I think he studied with Lehane, but maybe not. Lehane's a fairly famous author. He's got a bunch of books that got made into movies. Gone Girl and can't remember the other one. Anyway, Mystic River. That's the other one.
Oh yeah.
But he went to Bunker Hill Community College, which is a community college in Cambridge. It's right, or is it in Charleston? It's in Charleston, maybe. It's right on the line. It's right over the river from Boston. Right, it's right there. And it's just this little tiny school, basically. Great place. But and Lehane was teaching there for a while. I actually saw an interview with him years ago, and he was talking about teaching there. He's like, come with me. I'll show you the ropes. Like you can roll with me. I'll show you how to write novels and stuff.
It's not
I never did it. There's lots of things I never did. I know. Well, Taleb taught it at Amherst. I could have gone and took classes with Taleb at Amherst. I didn't know that back then, but
Yeah.
Lehane I knew about. I could have gone to Bunker Hill. It could have been in a class with Matt Damon. Freaking. Well, he wrote Good Will Hunting in that class at Bunker Hill. Right.
Wow.
I know. No, it's wild. And he's a Cambridge boy, so like I could have bumped into him in Harvard Square a million times. Who knows? Right? I don't
Well, there's
remember.
that passing down of the tradition too. It's not through the institution. It's through people
Right.
that best embody the institution or mentor or pass on the information through the guild or something to that effect.
Right.
It's not
exactly.
just through this blindly. Oh, I'll be a great person if I attend Harvard. It's like, yeah. Maybe if you have a great teacher, an example, someone to look up to, someone that holds virtues and values, someone that exemplifies the culture, as we would say here. Yeah, that's all. That's not done through this, what we call an organic institution, because that's not the case. That's as soon as
Right.
people leave. I've had people leave my company recently too. It's a completely different company now because
Right.
people have left. People were embodying a vitality or a spirit. And once those people gone, it's not just the aesthetic and it's not just the material. There's a energetic, you could say, the spiritual change in the way
spirit.
even people behave with each other, which people didn't used to before. I even noticed with myself, I've gained a bit more momentum in the company purely because of who I am, and there's a lack of this type of the type of person I am in the company, and people now kind of warming up to me or drawing close to me, which is quite a strange phenomena. Because you would think that if it's just culture, people would just keep embodying the same thing, regardless if it's just okay, someone's left. That's just a material
position.
change. Yeah,
What
exactly.
position? Like your position in the company hasn't necessarily changed,
Oh,
but
yeah.
they've changed their attitude towards you.
Yeah.
Not that you've had the same role the whole time, right? But
Yeah.
like you're in this role, you've been in this role, and then all of a sudden people are different towards you. It's like, what just happened? Right.
That's a culture war right there, literally, or culture battle. I don't want to call it skirmish, maybe. It's
Well, there's wars. There's wars
Yeah.
within the culture for the soul of the culture. We'll say that's for sure.
Yeah.
But the thing people are referring to when they talk about culture war is not that. It's really is like I want to replace this culture with another culture, but cultures are hundreds and thousands of years old. And so you can't go, you know what? I came up with this new idea yesterday, and just gonna
Thanks,
like
Marx.
replace the 100-year-old thing or the 50-year-old thing or the 1,000-year-old thing for my new idea. That's not gonna work. Were you high? No. Or worse yet, and it is worse. And this is sort of what James Lindsay's on about to some extent. I'm gonna replace the way this cultural aspect works with this other older thing or thing that's been running in parallel in the background all along, or whatever the hell nonsense they think, which is all wrong, by the way, provably so. Eleusinian mysteries, right, instead of Christianity. It's like, no. A, that's not even a real thing. And B, you don't have it. And C, it doesn't work, or it would have worked. Like, pragmatism is great. Like, it didn't work. I was talking about.
You can't point to a broken vase and assume that it held water. Maybe it was just a vase that was made. Like, did it ever fulfill its purpose? Right. That's what the Eleusinian mysteries are. Right. It's just a name for something. It's just a broken vase.
Or was it a vase that could only last so long?
Yeah.
So it was one of the great things that I was talking to Dr. Lanton Jack a few years ago in Clubhouse. I was chatting him up, and I was saying, like, what do you think of this Neoplatonism thing? And he says, why is anybody talking about Neoplatonism? Even if there is a Neoplatonism, it got crushed by Christianity. Like, it's gone, it's over. Like, it failed. Like, I don't, and he's not a fan either. I was like, oh, okay. You're not even a, like, Christianity good person. So fair enough, but, like, it's a good point. Like, if Neoplatonism was a thing, and it certainly wasn't, it died. Like, it got crushed by something else, which subsumed it, by the way, too. Like, this is why the so-called Neoplatonists go, Christianity's a lot of Neoplatonism in it. It's like, you're just trying to grab clout from Christianity for your stupid idea that failed. That's all you're trying to do.
Some people I've seen this year made the claim that, Christianity was the woke of the Roman Empire. And I'm like,
no.
Yeah, like,
it's so.
Yeah, like, yeah, I know what you're doing. You're sneaking something, and you don't even realize what you're saying, because you're actually making a good case for Christianity by doing that. But you think
you think you're not. Nathaniel makes me think of how many of the 90s movies for adults you mentioned would score much lower with the critics if they were made right now. Oh yeah, of course. Well, you have to understand. It's really hard to explain to people because, like, I see things that other people cannot see for whatever reason, and I don't understand why you're all blind. You are all blind, by the way. Sargon of Akkad YouTube channel, Carl Benjamin's original YouTube persona. On there was a playlist about Gamergate. I forget how many videos it is. Is it 6? Is it 8? Is it 4? I forget. Go watch that. Okay? That is 2014 or 2015. He put that out. You have to understand that all of the predictions he made then, and he made them then, those are when the videos were recorded and published, came true. Every single one of them. Gamergate was the expression that the institution of gaming critique had been infested by corrupt individuals. They had the goods. Gamergate as a scandal is a scam. It didn't happen. The things that are said about Gamergate are wrong, factually incorrect. All that happened was a bad agent, right, came into the system. She was exposed as a bad agent, actually caused at least one suicide, by the way, might be relevant. Yeah, for real, not joking. Carl goes into this, or Sargon, he goes into this, maybe not in that series, but he's talked about it before. A lot of people talked about it. Was exposed as being a fraud. And there was a cover-up around the exposure of being a fraud. That cover-up was Gamergate. That cover-up expanded because they found the fact that all these gamer magazines, online gamer magazines, and some weren't online, some were magazines, I guess, were colluding to set the ratings of video games. Okay? That happened in the movies too. That's what Rotten Tomatoes became, or maybe was all the time. In some cases, this is actually the same physical people. That's the other thing. Like, no one's hiding the ball, right? And I've talked about this before, and I really should do a video on this because it's something I can just do a video on any day. I read an article once. I don't know how accurate the article is. I didn't do the research on it, but didn't think I had to because I'd done quite a bit of research. There's a guy who claimed that he was an investigator, a banking investigator in a county in California. and that the company that became Countrywide Mortgage, which is well known for the 2008 mortgage scandal, was a previous company in his county that he had investigated during the savings and loan scandal. I can tell you this as an expert on this subject. Savings and loan scandal and the 2008 housing crisis are the same scam. His claim is that Countrywide was a company that was involved in the savings and loan scandal, and they pulled the same scam as a different company name. They changed counties so that they could do it. Other factors came into play, like the state stopped doing banking regulation altogether. Don't believe me? I've got the goods. I can show you. I personally can show you my complaints to the federal and state governments about the banking irregularities that were clear in my personal case, which I have all the paperwork for, by the way. If you want to do the research, you can. I'll just get you copies of it, or you can look it up online, right? This happened. Like, same bad actors in some cases. Like, this is not, like, this is happening. This evil is unfolding in front of us, and it's really easy to see, actually. But you have to believe in it first. Very hard to believe in evil if you don't acknowledge that evil exists, right? Like, it's hard to see it. You won't be like, oh, that's clearly evil, right? But there's a lot of clearly evil stuff out there, like, clearly. And when people get upset about, the Hunter Biden laptop or whatever, and then a bunch of people are denying it, right? Or a video showing voter fraud at a mass scale, people are denying it. Like, what do you think that is? Because they can't believe in evil, or they can't believe in that evil, or they can't believe that evil would be that obvious. That's why they're denying it. Like, why do you deny an 8.5-hour video that shows clear bad behavior? Why do you deny that there's a laptop with all this evidence that the FBI actually has? Like, because the FBI wouldn't cover it up. Really? The FBI? The FBI who covered up Whitey Bulger's bad behavior and then put him on the most wanted list and didn't capture him on purpose. And, like, I could go into details, guys. I've done my research, like, really? That FBI, the obviously corrupt FBI that's done so many bad things like that in the past that we know about, that we have paperwork on, that we have witnesses for, that FBI couldn't do it again? What are the odds they're not doing it now, right now? Of zero. Of course.
You've even got the Facebook, Facebook, all the social media companies colluding on that laptop story, which is that in itself is
Twitter.
A manifestation of an evil spiritual power, essentially.
30% of these employees were FBI sort of stuff. I don't know the real number. Like,
it's crazy.
It's not right. Like, Elon Musk is like, I fired them all.
Yeah. The other thing that came up too is a certain adult entertainment website that was pushing out a certain message through its products. That would coincide with the greater agenda of people that want to support woke messaging. There you go.
Yep.
I've avoided all the buzzwords except for one. You need one buzzword. But never mind. These things have happened, and they will happen again. You can even see it on small scales. I remember no one really liked Blink-182. It was if you had the CDs, right? If you had the CDs and you were in the know, you liked Blink-182. No one really liked Blink-182 until MP3.com came out. When MP3.com came out, it coincided with Blink-182's most famous album with a song called Feeling This. That song was available for free at the time that MP3.com was MP3s themselves were like exploding up as this new streaming music platform. Right. That one song was the most downloaded song, I think, for like 2 years. It's something like that. Because it was free, because it was hip, because it was of the moment, but most importantly, because it was new. It was a recency bias. No one knew who Blink-182 was, but the popular zeitgeist, again, buzzword, caught on to something new, and it wasn't Blink-182. It was free MP3s on the top 10 downloads. And the fact that that song happened to be there on the top 10 most downloaded songs with this new technology grabs people's attention. And that's what made Blink-182 the biggest thing ever. So you got to be aware of hindsight bias. People looking back at all these other Blink-182 songs were great. I'm like, nah, they weren't the band that you thought they were until that moment. That's what encapsulated them. You could say the same thing about Peterson. Basically, Peterson and those clips of him speaking to the, let's just say, the cultural Marxists in Canadian university. That moment, that particular time bubble, that transformed YouTube. YouTube was different after that point. YouTube was like cat videos, dorky things. It was nothing.
Right.
It was trying to find its identity, and as soon as that moment happened,
Identity
it became
happens
this
from
is
framing.
the new news broadcasting network.
Identity happens from framing. Yeah. Nathaniel, look into Detroit Become Human for a great example of this era. Yeah.
It's a video game, I think. Yeah.
But that's the thing. Like, people don't realize identity is not a function of you. It doesn't emerge. Identity is a function of the things around you and how you fit into them. And if you try to fit into them wrong, you're gonna have a problem.
Oh yeah.
Nathaniel says it's the last game to be reviewed on its own merits and not politics. Maybe. I don't. It's not a political issue, right? Again, it's a corruption issue. Politics is a bad way to think of the world.
Well, we notice politics more when there's the proliferation of more content. So when it was just PlayStation 2 magazine and that was the magazine to read if you were a PlayStation 2 owner, you wouldn't see any political framing because that's the only source of news or content you're absorbing. When there's 10,000 people talking about PlayStation 5, you'll start to notice patterns.
Right. No, it's a good point. I mean, when there's no contrast, you can't see. And the only people who are doing that are doing it out of love because,
yeah,
what else are you going to do? Nathaniel, sorry, I meant the game is political and got good reviews in 2018, but is now seen as controversial. Yeah, well, again, like everything's controversial from the past because people are trying to destroy the past. Why are they trying to destroy the past? They're trying to destroy the past because they're trying to bring down the culture. Because if the past isn't part of the culture, then I don't know what you're talking about. The culture is very wrapped up in what happened before.
And say what you will about Robert E. Lee, but the destroying of the statue, that's a historic moment, not just for America, but that's for, you could say, the West.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's... And then replacing it with what they've done is another thing. Or the Martin Luther King statue that came up this year with the hands looking like penises. Let's just be honest, they look like penises. Like, that's just... Yeah. Not good.
Sally Joe is a great art school story about that. About penises.
Oh, yes. I actually still think that guy was onto something, even though it was truly subversive. I think...
Well, of course he was onto something. It was evil, but yeah. Maybe someday we'll get her to share that story. That's a hysterical story. The fact that she saw it and no one else did, I'm just like, this is welcome to my life.
Yeah.
Like, you really don't see what's going on here, and everyone's like, oh, we can participate in this. No, don't participate in that. What's wrong with you? Why are you like that?
Oh, gosh.
I don't know. But people don't, everyone's like, oh, identity. It's like, oh, we've got to figure out identity. You're not going to figure out identity. That's not going to happen.
Or a singular
Identity
identity.
is assigned to you, right? Oh, Sally's putting limits on it. That's for the pay-per-view episodes. That's funny. I wonder if I can get away with that. I don't have a big enough audience to get away with like I wish I could do like a member channel where I just like raw life, swearing, whatever, right? Bad stories. That would be wonderful. I don't think I can pull it off. Like Tim Pool can pull that off. Mark, not so much. Not so much. I was gonna go to the stupid Tim Pool Carl Benjamin thing years ago in Pennsylvania that got canceled by Antifa, but I knew it was going to get canceled by Antifa, so I chickened out. I should have gone though. I should have gone anyway, but I did not.
There would have been an after. Someone would have organized an informal after party, or
No,
have a-
they did it anyway. They just didn't publish the new venue.
yeah.
Nathaniel, it treats AI unethically. Women are not having a good time in that game. Yeah, just saying. Now it would be ignored or reviewed poorly. Yeah, maybe. It's hard to know. I can't make any sense of what people are doing. Everybody thinks they can make sense of what's going on. I don't think so. Absolute worst issues. It's exactly as bad as you imagine. And school smashed patriarchy story could be. Yes, it really is. Yeah, it's worse than anything you can imagine. It's one of my favorite stories. This, Sally. It's like quintessential art school story right there. It's like the best art school story that could be. Like it's in some ways the ideal art school story. What the evils of art school unveiled by Sally Joe. Just fantastic.
What are people not understanding about this lack of participation in culture? Why are people like there's the whole the Great Resign or the Great Resentment or the Great Withdrawing. You have in Japan, like I think it was something like 40% of the young population still is are virgins, or you go deeper down, there's men are completely, I think it's like 5% now are completely withdrawn from society and work. Again, we've talked about this before, but like Japan is at the forefront of the meaning crisis. I would also say Berlin's not far behind that either, too, with the one part of Berlin. Oh, so Germany. Berlin was done in the new sense, and they had to go back and restore Munich in the old sense, and then now you have two completely different zeitgeists of that region. Again, don't have to get into all the different politics of that, but you can clearly see that these are choices that happened after a big event that have impacts on the culture and what's lost and what's cherished and what's appreciated. Can Japan save the world?
No.
Save Japan.
No.
Save
Save
the world?
Japan. Save the world. No, you can't save Japan. Japan's done. To the end of the meaning crisis, right? And you see that.
Well,
see that
arguably
quite clearly.
they've withdrawn once, right? They had that 200 or so period of they basically shut off from the West. They could do that again. They technically could do that again, and
But
they
that
might.
won't work.
It'll be
Like,
something
they're already
different.
done.
But
They're already over.
yeah,
Like Ghost in the Shell, man. I mean, you're the one
I
that
know.
insisted, and then
Yeah.
11 seconds, Jesse. It took me 11 seconds to see the whole thing. My brain just went all the way back, and I was like, "Whoa!
optimistic.
This is presaging their meaning crisis." 10 years later, right, when it was obvious by that point.
What was in that time? Because there was a Japanese economic decline. Because again, one thing people don't understand is that in the sort of there's a good 7-8 years there where Japan as a economic cultural influence dominated, like Sega, Nintendo, Sony, Canon.
Japan almost set up the world.
Yeah,
Almost.
through America, but yeah.
No, but they almost set up the world. Yeah, well, they were manipulating America, right?
Yeah.
They were tail wagging the dog. And like people don't know this. So like PlayStation, for example, there's in the US, there's each PlayStation version, 2, 3, 4, whatever, and the original PlayStation. There's one version, maybe two, maybe there's a Rev 2 or whatever. In Japan, there's like 10.
Yeah.
Because they would rev them there, test them on the Japanese market. So there are games in Japan that don't work on all of PlayStation 1s or PlayStation 2s or PlayStation 3s. I don't know if it's still true, but like that, and same with Nintendo and all the rest. Like they had different iterations that we never had access to that had different features or were missing different features more likely. And it's just like unbelievable. You watch Ghost in the Shell and it's like, wow. I mean, you just see it. You just see everything we're going through is right there. It's all like all the things we're experiencing now are right
Homicide, identity, intimacy, meaning.
It's all there.
It's all there.
Yeah,
biohacking. Yeah.
Biohacking, right?
Yeah.
Well, what is a human? Where does human begin and end?
Yeah.
That's the big question.
Also, there's return to spirituality and this Gnostic sense of like the voice
Right.
of the machine or the
Well, and
spirit
the-
of the things
and
coming
the-
up from the water, and
And the
yeah.
desacralization of the feminine is right in the beginning.
Oh
of-
yeah, yeah.
That's what blew me away. I'm like, this is Japan?
Yeah.
This
Well,
is
she
not
actually
Japan.
regresses to ruin it for people. She starts in
Oh.
a female body and then regresses to a child, and that child regresses to the gnosis, or to the, what would you call it? It's the, not demiurge, the ether. She becomes the spirit of the city in some weird sense.
Nathaniel, it still works that way. Japan had easier games because in the US we had rental culture and they didn't want games to be beaten before the due date. There's a lot more going on. Again, it's, can't even.
Sorry, this is esoteric note. Did you ever do any more research on that microchip that you heard that the US government spent more money on than the Manhattan Project?
No, I haven't looked
Okay.
into that whole project.
Because I was toying with that somewhere in the back of my head. I'm like, what does that mean?
I think
Like,
that's
that's-
Saber.
yeah.
Is that I think it's
Yeah.
Saber. And they renamed it. It was ER and then it was RE. I think it's Saber is the project. Yeah, the IBM project. Yeah, and that's the problem. Like, yeah, like, what does that mean? Like, what? And the thing is, like, do we understand the French Revolution? Because I would argue most people have no idea, right? And like most people don't.
Well,
And like Burn Power makes this point. Like, we haven't integrated the world wars yet, right? We have, that's for sure. Like, I guarantee you that. Like, does America even understand the Civil War? Because we don't. Like, we definitely don't. In fact,
Well,
I
you-
just found.
you need a culture to find consensus. Like,
that's
consensus
the
is
thing,
found
like-
later.
Well,
Right.
when we destroy the culture, right? When we try to
Mhm.
tear it down or rewrite it or whatever, or build a new one through magic or whatever nonsense we're trying, we'll never be able to integrate that, and so we'll go through a collapse. And so the Rome collapsed. Are we in a collapse like Rome? That's a good question. I mean, when did Rome collapse? It collapsed when the culture collapsed.
Yeah. There's one argument that when they changed the culture of going to war, that's when that was like the last straw or the final stroke of the leadership principles that the founders, for the lack of a better word, wanted Rome to be, which is that an army is always an integrated group of people. It's not a long-standing group of people. So there's always this precedent that we're just fighting this battle for this particular campaign, and that's it. And then we'll regroup, not stay as a group with grudges, essentially. That would be another way to say it. So,
Like,
don't get me started on that evil man. Don't get me
Yuval
started.
Harari, I know you mentioned him earlier, would just scream conspiracy theorist. Which? Well, and that's the point, right? And I have a video on the pattern of religion, right? That's, yeah. But who's the witch in your society that you're trying to burn?
You know, he's anti-kids. Like, he's flat out said. I wanted to bring this up at some point.
He's pure
Yeah.
evil. Like,
Yeah.
I know he's pure evil. Like, I don't, like, do you want me to list all the aspects of pure evil? Because we don't have time. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, I mean, the guy's just he's not a good person. I don't know, just, like, I like, and that disgusting resurrection, redemption of Sam Harris, because Hamas. I was like, you guys are using Sam Harris moral math. This is going to come back to haunt you. And it
Oh,
did immediately. Immediately. Oh, you killed 40 babies. You killed 41 babies. You're more evil than them. It's like, oh my goodness, guys, you got to stop.
Forest for the trees. Missing the forest for the trees.
Well, they can't.
Yeah.
They've been told they can understand something like that. No, you can't. You're too stupid. Sorry, you're too stupid.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much more obvious to say this, but anyone who's against procreation, it's not kids, it's procreation.
It's being.
Being, right?
You're not
Well,
a
even
being as
becoming
good.
it's actually dual too. It's becoming because you become a parent. No, I'm saying there's a second order effect. That's what I'm trying to say. That is
No,
also
there's
being denigrated because you always stay in the stasis of this non-entity when you don't have a child, or at least you don't try to have a child. Because even in that attempt to try to have and you don't have, at least you've become something else. But you're still being at the top is the principle. But there are these manifestation of experiences that grow people up with character, and when you fail to integrate that, you're just a permanent muppet.
Sally Joe's got the comment of the night here. The list of pure evil is a different 48-hour stream. We will need a team of 6. Sally Joe's got military experience. She knows what she's talking about. She's talking about teams and numbers. She's got a 10. She's probably right. I'm not gonna fight against 48 hours in a team of 6 because maybe that's correct. But yeah, that's the problem.
If someone slides me $2,000, I'll do it. I'll do 12-hour blocks with 5-hour sleep breaks. I'll do it.
There we go.
Just saying.
We can tag team on that. We can do the whole thing. Do 6 hours on, 6 hours off.
Yeah.
I could totally do that. For enough money. Totally.
Yeah.
In like Flynn. Done. And I need the money, so let's make that. I need way more than that, but that's a good start. We'll start with a couple of grand. Yeah.
Couple grand US too, because our dollar is horrible over here.
No, it's got to be US dollars.
Yeah.
Everything's got to be US.
Yeah.
Sally Joe, you need the support Manning, or it'll be a soup sandwich. Oh, of course. I think we could get it. Nathaniel, I'm trying to shake off 40 years of hearing the phrase, it's an education problem, and you've all triggered me tonight. I love Jesse Vance too. Jesse Vance are great. Yuval should trigger you because he's evil.
Okay, this appeals to education though. I'm sorry to say, it did work. It has had an effect. When they, C.S. Lewis was pointing this out in the 1950s. When you change the sentiments and traditions of the way knowledge is passed down, which is what education is, of course it's going to influence. It's just not had any influence in a positive way. It's just been more degradation, more day. It's they're saying, we just need to do it more so it has more positive effect. Except, what principles are you starting with? Because
it's worse. We've reduced education to a material thing.
Well,
it isn't. Right, and turned it into training. I have a video on that, right? Education versus training, and then we've assumed the reason why we did that, the telos of doing that, was better jobs for everybody. Because better jobs, you make more money. If you have more money, you have better material. If you have better material, you live a better life. The problem with all of this is that thesis, that theory, that hypothesis, that idea was already disproven. Already. In the late 1800s and early 1900s. In the United States. It's also been disproven dozens of times in Europe. But we'll put all that aside. I don't know European history that well. In Boston, they gave all of the best land around just south of the city of Boston, gorgeous land, Jamaica Plain, all the areas south. Jamaica Plain in particular is gorgeous. It's got a nice pond and everything. To the poor people. Because I've seen the writings. They actually wrote about this. Because if you put people in a good environment, they will become good people. The only reason they're bad people is because they live in a bad environment. In other words, they have no impact on their
climate. Yeah.
Well, they have no impact on their environment, right? Like they. In other words, the great man theory is bullshit, right? You can't put a great man somewhere and have him lift up the neighborhood, because you can.
Well, that version of a great man theory, because they're monotheistic ways of going.
But the great man theory is correct. It's just not complete. It's there are great men, and without them, like Jason the Argonauts doesn't happen without Jason. Like I don't know what else. Troy doesn't fall without
Achilles. Yeah.
Any number.
Pericles, technically speaking, if Pericles doesn't die. Yeah.
This is the problem.
Hector too. Yeah. If Hector doesn't die,
that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make the great man theory wrong, because they're all required to have the outcome. That's where people get confused. Not symmetrical. It's not exclusive.
4 or 5
It is-
people to make a great band. So
It's not exclusive and it's not symmetrical. And we get confused by that because symmetry is easy, right? Exclusivity is easy. When you can just narrow things down to one thing, it's easy to understand. And we're told we can understand things. And therefore, everything must be one, exclusive, right? It has to be because we can understand it because we've been told we can understand it, right? And it has to be symmetrical because we can't understand things that aren't that way. It's very hard for us to do. And so it has to be that way, but the world isn't that way. The number of times I have to explain asymmetry to people and say, no, this it doesn't go both ways. Like, I don't know where you got that. It obviously does not. It's insane. I've spent entire weeks where just explain that to a dozen people, and it takes hours sometimes because they can't cognize it. Their cognition's overloaded. It's horrible. Nathaniel, at one point he moved his hands outward as if he was a demiurge flattening the world. There you go. I'm glad you see that. See, I would see something like that and I would just laugh my ass off because I'd be like, yeah, he's flattening the world. Everybody would look at me funny. And I'm like, how do you not see this? Ethan, sounds like Rousseau. Well, yeah, we're living in the shadow of Rousseau.
Yeah.
And Rousseau is such a deceptive liar who knew he was lying. It's just like, throw it out. I don't understand. Like, we can't burn books. No, we can. We just burn the right ones. Fair, that's hard, but also, like,
to put it in this context, I think I've said this before too. You know, the COVID lockdowns or the agreement on why COVID lockdowns had happened and what we're doing that for, that was the proliferation of the social contract. Or we got to stand 2 meters apart because then the virus won't get us, or you won't get me, or whatever's happening. If I'm just this far away and we agree to be this far away, or
that's the
social contract. It's yeah.
Good night, Daniel.
Daniel. Yeah.
I hope you watch the rest.
Take care.
I like what Sales just says. Yes, another 48 hours stream on the existence of 3, 1, 2, and 3. Great video by me. Thank you very much. Could use some feedback though. Got to tune that one. Yeah, I mean that's the problem. But also, so I was thinking about this today. I didn't realize this. I've been thinking about this. Going through this crazy lawsuit. One of the things I told my lawyer is there's no Perry Mason moment here, right? Like, you don't win in court. That's not, you win long before you get in front of a judge or a jury or whatever. You don't. And everybody should know this because long before Perry Mason came out, which is a wonderful show. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's actually wonderful. I love Perry Mason episodes.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
And no, they're great. Perry Mason's great. It's fun. It's great fun. Classic TV for sure. And my uncle has regular over-the-air antenna TV. So the last time when I was up for Thanksgiving, I was at his house watching old TV shows, old Westerns and Perry Mason and all this stuff, right? Long before that came out, there's To Kill a Mockingbird. To Kill a Mockingbird is the refutation of the Perry Mason moment. Because right in court, he proves that the testimony is incorrect and that the eyewitnesses are lying. And nobody cares. And the verdict does not go the Perry Mason way. And I was like, man, I never saw that before. But wow, that's a cool thing to see. Like, there's the refutation of the Perry Mason moment right into Kill a Mockingbird. Nobody notices. Nobody notices. Because normally Perry Mason comes up with this last minute information. You know, his private eye is enters the courtroom at the last minute while he's right in the middle, running out of things to say. And then he says, Your Honor, I think, right? And then I'd like to call blah. Right. And then that person is there or his private eye testifies or whatever, brings the evidence right to the secretary or, you know, and then that case turns right on that piece of information. To Kill a Mockingbird, the piece of information is there. Case doesn't go his way anyway.
Yeah, well, that's another forest for the trees moment. People assume that book is saying one thing. You know, it's a one. Don't get hung up on this monotheistic worldview, a one-centered or one, you know, we're just focusing on this one identity or this one emphasis, this one point, and that explains the story. You know, and you've said this before, you know, safety, safety, climate,
race,
economics,
Politics.
politics.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
just go on and on and on. Right? There's all that's
Lizard
and that
people.
is the culture war. Like that's what
Yeah.
people are talking about, but you can't. None of those was a replacement for culture. None of them. So it can't be a culture war. This is not like if you went with climate, that would replace what we have now. Like that wouldn't work. We know it wouldn't. Like it's obvious that it wouldn't work. It's apparent that it wouldn't work. And so what does that mean? It means it's not a war. It's not two warring factions fighting each other. It's not even 10 equal factions fighting each other. It's not. The only outcome is chaos. And evil doesn't care. Evil's like, sure, man, chaos away, dude. Or just leave me here in charge. Leave Yuval Harari doing what he's doing. That's fine too. Evil doesn't care. Evil's like, leave the WEF in place, and the people who are in power now in power. It'll be fine. Like I'm happy either way. And we're just like, and the signal ratio on taxes or theft. Oh no, this is not good. And it's getting ramped up. Not just taxes, but that whole, why should we ever give any money to anyone but ourselves ever? It's all theft. It's all right. It's like, no, we don't want to cooperate anymore. It's like, oh no, you think you're not getting
good.
anything out of the government.
That's
It's all
good.
chaos. It's all chaos
Yeah.
all the way down. Yeah, it's beyond not good. It's extremely bad.
I could understand not paying to the federal level and paying to the state level, because then you're paying into your community. I think I can understand that sentiment.
Yeah.
Still,
Me too. Me too.
do you want people to invade your country? Because then you might want a federal government
Right.
for that principle
Well,
alone.
and the feds used to be like, that money used to come from the states in the U.S.
Yeah.
So it wasn't as much.
All right. Yeah, cool.
And in the
Yeah.
U.S., we do have a huge federal government that could be cut by 2/3 tomorrow with no loss of functionality. In fact, a vast improvement across all areas for sure. But
And confirm.
yeah, but yeah, it's such a tricky, slippery, thing, and nobody wants to touch, because everything's a sacred cow now. And it's like, I'm not
Isn't
sure
that
about
interesting? The longer the proliferation of, you could say, decline becomes sacred in itself. That all these things that are malfunctioning, we don't really want to change them because we're worried about second order effects.
But the interesting thing is, the new stuff is the sacred cow. It's like that was like yesterday, dude. I don't even know what that is. Like, that's not a sacred cow to me. Like, I remember when that wasn't around. Like, why do you want to save that? That's new. You don't save the new stuff. The new stuff's the stuff that you go, oh, that was an error. Well, let's get rid of it now before it gets worse. Like, I don't understand. We have the total back, because it's an emergence is good world instead of a being is good world, right? And so anything that's emergent is sacred. It's like, no, emergent things are chaotic and bad on average. Like, some things that emerge are good, but you got to be real careful. And we're not seeing
What's a plain example of that? What's a plain example of that? Like, if a new thing that's being highly projected, social media, maybe.
No. I mean, if you want a plain example, it's eating bugs. Like, the idea of eating bugs en masse is A, like 4 days old, and B, obviously bad. Like, it's a bad idea. Like, it's a bad idea. It doesn't matter how you analyze it, right? Which layer of analysis you want to use. You can go, okay, is it good for health? No, because it turns out that bugs just carry more disease on average because of the structures and whatnot. And so if you eat more bugs, you're going to get more diseases. These diseases are actually new to humans, because humans aren't used to eating bugs for the most part, except there are some cultures that eat more bugs than others, but that doesn't mean they can eat any bugs either, right? Okay, fine. Maybe it's bad on that layer of analysis, but what about the layer of analysis of better than beef? Well, clearly not, because you can't scale it the same way, right? Like, when you start looking at the infrastructure to do crickets large scale to replace beef, it's already a no. Like a farm and beef.
What
is
happens
so
if
much
one
more
farm
efficient.
gets out?
Protein per space used and then processing, because it's still processing either way. It doesn't, like, you don't just throw the crickets in a bag and sell the bag. Like, no, right? Like, okay, so it doesn't work on that layer of analysis. Okay, but what about like cheapness of scale of shipping, right? That's production, right? What about shipping? No, right? Because it just turns out that the weight to protein ratio is different, and now you have a bigger. You can raise bugs anywhere. No, you can't. Like, that's just false. Like, it's all these assumptions because we've reduced the world, so we think we know. Well, of course, you can grow the same quality of cricket everywhere. No, you actually you can't even do anything remotely like that. By the way, what do crickets eat? Like, do you think crickets eat something different than cows? Like, I don't. Do you not understand how the world? And they don't. Like, that is the problem. Like, they, you know, cricket consumption of grass turned into protein, is that more or less efficient than cows? Oh no. Right? Like, all these problems come. It doesn't matter how you analyze the problem. Bugs are worse. So why is this a sacred cow? Like, I don't understand. Like, what is wrong with you? You know what's sacred? The cow. That's why we call it a sacred cow, you muppet. This isn't that hard. The name's right there.
Well, you went you went with positive framing there. You just go with one negative framing and it would solve. Okay, so you're developing this large facility to host all these crickets. Something bad happens because something bad always happens. It's just law of entropy. You get Jurassic World 3 where all the crickets are out now and just roaming the website, laying waste, destroying California. Like, that literally happened. The locust swarms in different effects in many times in history. Like, is that plague, Mark? Is that one of the apocalypse right there?
Do you want a plague, Jesse? Because that's how you get a plague. It's like, that's one of my favorite lines. Do you want ants? Because that's how you get ants. Do you want a plague? That's how you get a plague. Yeah. Yeah, I want to read this. This is funny. Sally Joe, we actively have people encouraged to invade our country. So yeah, not helping. Trying to believe taxes aren't theft, Mark. Trying. I'm only a muppet. Taxes are theft when you're not getting services. So fair. The fact that so many people have that feeling about it is not good, because again, we're going to drag things down rather than fix them. The problem with eating bugs is you can't get their poop out first. That's part of the problem, right? All bugs are eaten poop in. That is also true. Crickets can't digest the woody bark that cows can. It would have to be rotted first. Right. Grass is woody. Yes. Also, crickets do eat grass. Just saying. Yeah, they're just poor digesters of it. But actually, crickets, locusts, yeah, it's not good. But also, they carry diseases that animals do not carry. And you cannot remove those disease elements from them through processing. So when you eat crickets, you're taking a chance. And look, if you eat one cricket, you're probably going to be fine. But that's the problem of scale. Yeah, if you eat one chocolate-covered cricket, the odds of getting sick are tiny, even if the entire cricket is infected. But when you're trying to get the equivalent of a steak, or a half a steak or whatever. I ate a half a steak today. It was awesome. It's a wonderful dinner. When you're eating that many crickets and only half of them are diseased, you're getting sick. And people they don't understand. Like, they think it's symmetrical or linear or what. It's not. It's a big problem.
Well, if you watch Snowpiercer too, what they designed their cockroaches to eat are humans. So that the poor humans,
Sally.
Yeah.
Snowpiercer is a funny movie.
I don't think it makes the point that people think it makes too either.
No. Well, that's the thing. But that's the problem, is that when you point that out, the problem is that you give postmodernism its due, and you shouldn't. Like, postmodernism is evil. So you cannot send the message you want to send in the world, period, because you're always saying more than you think, period. And you can blame language being imprecise if you want, but A, that doesn't solve a problem, and B, it can't be solved. So the fact that that is true is not optional, and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah,
But-
one of the human phenomena too is recency biased. Like, I always remember how the person treated me recently, not over. That's the thing that will come to my head is like, how good has this person been to me recently, not over how good is, how long of this relationship in this life have I had with this person. That's what should be more trusted or developed or cherished.
Well, people don't, right, and people don't know
The
this.
recent fight.
They're like,
yeah.
well, they're like, oh, well, this just happened. And I'm like, no, this is the fourth time this person's done this very same thing. Exact same thing. This is a discussion I had on Monday. This is the fourth time. Literally the fourth time. Every time something happens, this person goes, oh, well, that's good for me. It's like, no, literally not good for you, dude. Like, no, there's no frame in which that's good for you. And no, this definitely benefited me. It's like, no, it didn't. So you can gaslight, and it was gaslighting. There's a lot of gaslighting going on. There's gaslighting. It's like, no, definitely not. And you can say it over and over again, and people will. It works. It works if you are confident and insistent. No, this is to my advantage. People will start to believe you because you're so confident, and you get confused. You get cognitively overloaded because you can't make sense of it. So somebody says something nonsensical like Yuval Harari does all the time, and they say it over and over again, and you get confused because you can't understand why they keep saying it, but they're so confident. Then they win.
Charisma.
They hijacked your cognition.
Yeah, that appeal to charisma is it's a dark thing.
Well, that's not even charisma. I wouldn't say that's
Well,
charisma.
okay.
That's just cognitive
Okay.
overload, treachery. Charisma is somebody who says something, whether they're right or not, that you like and believe immediately. Charisma is a magical power. This cognitive overload, I can teach anybody to do that in about an hour. And it's not that hard. Like literally, like there's a confidence component, right? We can train confidence, Jesse, can't we? We know how to do that. Yeah, we have another trainee, by the way. She's going to report back. We can train confidence. That's not.
I need to do it for another month. I got some walls.
Keep going.
Well,
Don't give up.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a course out of that,
Yeah,
by the way,
thank
too.
you.
I'm gonna even though I don't.
Yeah.
It's
I'll try and help.
almost
I'll try and
It's
help.
almost too easy to make a course out of, but I'm gonna anyway. You can train confidence. That's easy. Like famous dictators in the 20th century did that. This is not hard. You can also, once somebody's confident enough, and they don't need to be totally confident, you can train them to cognitively overload people all day long. So easy to do. I've done it to people on purpose. Like I definitely use that tactic occasionally, because some people are just like really smart people. You need to cognitively overload them to get them to open up, because they won't open up. Now, yeah, it's a force, and it can be used for good or evil. And hopefully, I only use it for good. Although
I have a few friends like that, which is really weird. It's like they don't want to hear you. They want to hear you. That you want to hear you, and you just have to keep. You just have to persisting. These are the points. You're not listening, and then they're like, "Oh, I'm suddenly here in the conversation, willing to participate with you." It's like it's been going for about an hour.
Right. I've been literally making the same statement over and over again, 6 different ways, and you haven't heard me the whole time. And this is like the story of my entire existence. Yeah, like literally said that. Actually, right. It's like if you just listen to me the first time, but people are too busy listening to the fantasy world in their head. They're too busy going, "Oh yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
So you are." So I projected an image of you in my head, and so it's like, what? What is going on?
What's going on is people want to associate with their projected image of themselves in their head. So I just recently had yeah.
We've been told we can.
Yeah.
Like, let's be fair to ourselves. People have told us we can do these things. You can't do that. You're a freaking lunatic if you think you can. You can't do that. You can't. Anyway.
So
Go
yeah.
on. Give
So
us
one
a
thing,
story, Jesse.
one
Give
thing
us
I've
a
my
story.
story time with this Muppet. So I have this friend. Let's just say he went to private boys' school, so that's the type of person he is. And he now lives down in Bondi. Bondi is the beach suburb of Sydney. It's with all the 20-something KIP people and 30-something KIP people and the 40-something KIP people. If you go there on a Saturday night, the palpable sexual energy of the place is terrifying. So one thing I've been doing recently is trying to get away from wearing t-shirts out in public. I feel like t-shirts are an at-home thing and not a in public thing. So I've been wearing shirts and trying to dress better in order to grow myself up, literally speaking, wearing shirts. However, he invited me to come, my friend, to Bondi. Bondi, again, Saturday night, lots going on. I'm here dressing, you could say, conservatively, wearing a shirt. Also, I don't wear shorts in public. I feel like shorts are, again, something for private. Maybe if you're at the beach, you can wear shorts. Shorts are just, they're overrated. They're a thing of casuality. If you're going out in public, dress your best. Represent yourself well. Respect yourself. That is where my friend didn't agree with me and didn't want to associate with me. I showed up to Bondi looking sharp, looking good. I came to meet him and he was looking drab. His face was drab. He didn't want to essentially go out in public. I was like, no, I'm here. I never go here. It's about an hour away. Let's go out. Let's go for a walk. You know, you treat this place as just normal. You just walk down the beach. That's all normal to you. This is not normal to me. Let's go for a walk. There was a palpable, manifest phenomena of me getting some eyeballs because I was dressed well and everyone else either dressed in sexualized clothing or in casual clothing. I was the one that stood out. Ironically, if I was looking for someone that night, I probably could have had an exchange or at least a moment with someone purely because I was dressing to be appreciated rather than to be noticed or to blend in. And so my friend was, you could say, let's just use the word, pissy at me because I dressed for myself and to be respected rather than in his projection of what you should do and what should participate in this moment, which is being beach clothy or being young and youthful, even though you might be 40. That's not the thing I wanted to be associated to. And so he was annoyed at me for basically the entire night of hanging out because I had just worn a shirt and some pants. So yeah, that was. I could say I wasn't aware of the level of annoyance I was giving to someone by respecting myself and not appealing to his projected image of, oh, you're coming to Bondi, you're coming to hang out with me, this is a low-key thing. Like, what, why are you dressed up? You look, to his first, you look corporate. I'm like, if this is what you think corporate is, we have two completely different versions of corporate. I view corporate as an actual suit and tie with nice, fancy, shiny shoes. This is just dressing well. That's
the flattening of the world, where there's only two levels, right? There's corporate and not corporate.
Casual.
Casual,
whatever.
Right.
Which is basically just a teenager. You're just basically a child teenager for the rest of your life in the modern clothing.
Right, but there's only two modes. It's like, oh, no, the hierarchy's deep. No. And that depth of hierarchy is what's missing. We were talking to Corey about this, actually. It's pretty funny.
Okay.
I was saying, like, yeah, you need the church, you need the monastery, and then you need the rest of the village. That's a deeper hierarchy than just the village and the church. It's a much deeper hierarchy. And then that gives you a sense of deep hierarchy, which is really important because, if you just have two modes, like what Sally Jo said here, inside thoughts are just louder than the outside thoughts. Okay, well, they're not just louder than the outside thoughts, but they're quicker, they're brighter, shinier, they're better, they're perfect. Inside thoughts are all, like, every thought I have is perfect. Every single freaking idea I have is awesome and perfect. Every single one, Jesse. It's amazing. I don't know why the rest of you can't just, like, what's wrong with you? Like, if you just, come on. Muppets, let's go.
Yeah. Well, we at the same time as we have experienced this decline of the West, we have more and more upkeeps in fandoms being shared fantasies,
Yeah.
and then you have into
Right.
battles with shared fantasies, like, no, this side of Tolkien is the right side. Oh no, this side of Tolkien is the right side.
Splinters. It does the Protestant constant splintering thing,
Oh
right?
gosh.
Because that's the religious pattern. They're stuck in the religious pattern, but they're rebels, and they
Yeah.
don't understand. Like, rebellion only leads to more rebellion. Oh, something good will emerge in our rebellion. Yeah, maybe for a little while, maybe, but how long will it be good for exactly? Yeah, not very. Eventually, it will just splinter again, and then you're screwed. Sally Joe, their inside thoughts about their man baby cloths were better than their outside shame against the glory of the basic adult historical clothing. That,
Well said.
well said, Sally.
Well
That
said.
is brilliant. That is brilliant. Yeah. Well, that's the power of distributed cognition right there. Right. Like, we all sort of contribute to add to the story to give you different perspectives on the same thing, and how much is there, right? That's the proper way to think about the point that the postmoderns make, even though they're reprehensible and should all die.
I also do have something I've learned recently, and then for any single people in the audience, this may be a clue. I saw more girls that are available in a taco place than I did in any of these modern clubs. So go to where the good ones are, which are probably just around food, and hang out there and get noticed there. Don't go to these fancy clubs where it's all for show, it's all for distraction, it's all for essentially
But they're not there
fantasy.
They're not there for anything quick. I mean, anything permanent. They're there
anything
for
meaningful. Yeah. So
Benjamin
find the local food
Franklin.
places where people are at, and you'll probably meet someone. That's
We're gonna roll the dice. What does the tie represent? It doesn't represent anything, dude. I don't know what to tell you. Things are not individually representative. That isn't how the world works. Context determines identity. Framing determines identity. Right. In other words, any symbol changes its symbolism based on where it's used. You can't go from the bottom up. Everything comes from the top down. It's emanation first, not emergence. Emergence is there. Emergence is necessary. Emergence is not the thing.
Yeah, because you can have the symbol of a tie on a black t-shirt. You can have those t-shirts where it looks like you're wearing a suit. Like, that means nothing then, that symbol of the tie. It doesn't.
Sally Joe, it represents the functioning patriarchy. Yes. Well, that's
Yes.
also true.
Can confirm.
Lol. Can confirm. The patriarchy as such, which is required because nothing else works. I've heard a lot of buzz this week too, by the way, about the patriarchy is what's always worked, and every attempt to not patriarchy has failed, and therefore we just have to accept the patriarchy. I'm like, I don't like the framing, but also you're not wrong. So, like,
I came out of Barbie going, I'm definitely pro patriarchy. I didn't think I'd ever say that out loud, but okay.
the writer there, she said that was definitely not supposed to be a pro patriarchy movie. It's supposed to be, and she's all upset, and it's like, well, it was more popular with men than with women. I guess you screwed up, honey. You didn't know what you wrote. Not that it was a movie, because it still wasn't a movie.
It's like 7 trailers stuck together.
Did you see my Barbenheimer live stream?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
okay.
of course. Yeah, of course.
Okay.
It's one of the better cultural moments on this.
Sally Joe. See, this is genius right here. If it's not patriarchy, men are shaming. That's correct. It's patriarchy or shame, baby. That was one of the things that always bothered me with the dirty, smelly hippies I used to live with. They were like, I was shamed in this way, and I was shamed in that way. And I'm like, is shame optional? So the fact that you were shamed, maybe that was inevitable. And they're like, we just need to get rid of shame. And I'm like, because you were traumatized by the fact that you wanted to rebel? Like, I don't know. And I recognized that when I was young, basically. So I'm always puzzled by people who are just figuring this out. I'm like, really? This isn't obvious. Oh, good Lord, good Lord. I'm going to address it anyway. Benjamin Franklin, speaking of the patriarchy, I've been thinking about this a little. Are ant colonies patriarchal? No. People say it's matriarchal because the queen, but the queen exists as a tool. You know, when you speak, you make no sense most of the time. It's important that you know that. Everything at the top is a tool. Like, I don't. Things in kind. Sally Joe, aunts are more like the same body than a society. I think you mean ants. Which is odd because in New England we say aunt as ant, and it's amusing. It's one organism, right? Yeah, it's more like a single organism. And like your head is a tool for the rest of your body in the same way that the body is a tool for your head. No kidding. That doesn't change based on queen or no queen. It's the same. That's part of the people get confused. Like they think things are different when they're identical. Hierarchy run by a man and a hierarchy run by a woman are the same. They don't manifest the same. They don't implement the same, but they have all the same properties in terms of who's using whom. The same subjectiveness is there. In other words, the head is always subject to the body, and the body is always subject to the head. One of the most brilliant things I ever heard Jonathan Peugeot say is, okay, the man may be the head, but then the woman is the neck. And it's like, yes, the women point you. They point you because they're the neck. The head can't point itself. The neck points the head. It's like, yes, if the man is the head, the woman is the neck. Can confirm that is true. The woman guides your attention. That's what she does. Women point. Uh-oh. Can it be? Nope. We have a failure to launch. Maybe Sally's running Discord, and so it won't let her in.
I do need to eat soon, so.
Eating's not real, Jesse. You don't need to eat. Fasting is a thing, man. You're not supposed to eat. There we are. Now you're in. Welcome, Sally.
I can't spell, so I have to come and be on camera. If I leave awkwardly, it's because I'm keeping my kid off the camera because I'm not exploiting him for internet worth.
I would.
Shamming. If it's not patriarchy, men are shamming. That was what I was trying to say.
No,
Not
shaming's better.
Shamming. No, shamming is better. Because, guys just don't do stuff if they're not in charge of it. So, let them. That's
Also true.
That's my theory.
Also
Sort of
true.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway. Hi. I came here now, so now I'm here. It was the only reason.
Excellent.
Just say that one word correctly.
That's it. That was your one reason. Just
Yep.
you have so much
Only
more to
reason.
offer. I don't know. I feel like I was addressed as Benjamin Franklin. The man who mistook his white for a house does a white. No, it doesn't. You misinterpreted. You're just wrong about everything mostly, but you're good at it. At least you know your talents in life. It's amazing how people misinterpret simple things like that all the time. It just blows my mind.
Well, it's amazing how much people don't know about nature. It boggles me. Ants are almost all ants in existence are female, and it's just not even. And then they're all sister cousin things. They're almost the exact same female. So
Right.
if you wanted to put it in terms, it's just like a chick living with all of her sisters with a few men in prison. That's an ant colony in people terms.
That's hysterical, but that's true. I didn't think of it that way.
The
A few men in prison.
the closest human got to ants is the Mormon chicks with the sister wives, except they're just keeping the husband at their leisure and doing everything themselves because they can't be trusted anymore because they'll get lost or eaten by a bird.
That sounds right. That sounds right. I like it.
So, yeah, not really comparable. Also, nobody thinks about the ecological collapse of like if we teach people that bugs are to be eaten and then we eat all the bees instead of letting them make honey because we get impatient. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, Sally, here. You can address this from Benjamin Franklin.
No, they're ants. They'll always be ants.
I know.
Ants
I
will
love
always be ants.
Yes, but what if we confuse the categories? Then you're retarded, and you need training and education to stop being stupid.
The ants will never be from the womb of man.
Right. No, but what if we just randomly cram together categories and make up new things like effective altruism? Then you're retarded, and you need training and education.
People should just meditate on the existence of three. We should skip the evil stream, the stream about three and how three exists. We could just and how numbers are fake, because I'm still mind blown about how fake numbers are.
No, numbers are fake.
No, they are fake, Jesse. I will prove it.
Twitter.
It's horrible. It's horrible.
Twitter.
I will prove it with this paper. Look, one. We got one thing, don't we? Oh, yeah. Oh, crap. Two things. Oh, my God. Now what happens? Exponential dread. I got one thing. You know what's worse than that? Is we could take three out of one of them, so then it's not even anymore.
No, but notice, Sally, you tore 3 times. Well, actually, no, you tore twice and made 4 things.
Right. And then I tore 1 to make 3. And then what can we do with it?
Right. And now it's 1. So on Twitter today, this is so funny, right? It's funny to watch the stupid people fight with the dumber people. It's like, even though you're on the right side, you're still so stupid. I can't support your position, even if you're correct. Right? Somebody posted.
You're right for all the wrong reasons. You're right, but it's for all the wrong reasons.
No. You're right, but you're too stupid to be on my side, so I can't agree with you. So somebody posted, prove that 2 + 2 = 4 in mathematics, and of course, somebody took up the challenge and started in with this, and I'm like, all right, 2 apples, 2 more apples, 4 apples. Why isn't that your go-to? Why are you going to this esoteric nonsense?
What's more insane is like an apple has like 5 seeds in it, and potentially all 5 of those seeds could make infinite apples.
Right.
Infinite. Right. And that's the difference between like nature and like things humans make that just seem silly in comparison. Like they are. Yeah.
No, I don't watch Rick and Morty anymore.
No.
You certainly don't watch the new ones that aren't good because people were smart left. Why would anybody?
The whole thing collapsed.
It collapsed
4 years ago, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure it was good before the creative genius left.
The major problem with Rick and Morty was the nihilism, which always leads to suffering and death. So.
Oh, little nihilism never killed any. Oh, no, never mind. It ate every culture it ever touched. My bad. I get that backwards. That happens.
My brain is stuck on like 1 apple seed possibly equals infinity. These are the kinds of things I trip over so hard I can't think like a normal person. The hairs
So when we
on
say
grass,
3, are we really saying symbolic 3?
any more than 2.
No.
So like you got 1, you got 2, and you got 3. And the relationship of 1 to 1 is just like 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 to 1. But the relationship of 1 to 2 goes this way, but then it also goes this way, and it just quantifies so exponentially. It's just like, yeah, I don't know.
But wouldn't you say 3 is a strong chord? Though?
I don't think in music, I have no I have no language of music.
None.
None. It's negative, actually. My non-knowledge of music
You can
takes
just use
away
rope,
from
though.
people's knowledge of music.
A 1-strand rope isn't as strong as a 3-strand rope.
It depends if they're twisted or not.
Well, by nature, I'm saying if they're a cord, then yeah, they would be twisted.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. What's crazy is two cords, like 2 strands of rope, twisted is stronger than 2 strands of rope. It's boggling. It's boggling.
Right. Right. Well, and that is the 1, 2, 3 problem, which I have a video on, so I posted that link. Yeah, it's really hard to understand how significant 3 is compared to 2. It's like it's not a linear difference. It's not how the world is, and even in math, it's expressed, but we don't. Like, nobody teaches it that way. Nobody. So. Michelle, thank you very much, sir. It's good to see you. Why do materials argue about the answer to life's purpose, given their focus on material success? And how can this perspective coexist with other interpretations of purpose in the midst of cultural wars? Hi, Jesse and Sally.
This makes me wonder if there's any materialists at all, because peak materialism, like historically, should just be one guy Scrooge McDucking his life away, and I haven't found one yet.
Right. Well, I know of a few, but yeah,
Oh, okay. Well,
it doesn't last very long.
yeah.
Well, look, I mean, they argue about this because they know they need it. Like, it's an inevitable pattern, I think, right? Like, even a hardcore materialist needs the answer to why am I here, right? And yeah, the answer might be nihilistic ultimately, but that's a choice. Like, you can choose nihilism. I don't recommend it. I think it's a bad idea, but
it's way better to choose the is it useful question. Is it useful?
Right.
Just ask yourself, is it useful every day about 1,700 things? That's the best.
Well, and this perspective doesn't coexist. Right. I think very much, Michelle, to your point, like, that's what looks like the culture war, is these people, these materialists trying to come up with a purpose for life, and then they're all picking different material purposes, right? And then it's like, no, the purpose is political. No, the purpose is economic. No. The purpose is to save Gaia. No, the purpose is to better the universe. The purpose is to be nice to others. The purpose is, right? All these actual material things that maybe you don't think of as material, but that looks like a culture war to us. Right?
There's also, you've got to be dangerous when you hear a widely adopted frame that's singular. It's just culture, or it's just race, or it's just safety, or it's just economics, or where everything's chemistry and hormonal, or those sort of tactics of conversation often lead to just more argumentation. There's nothing being generated. It's just who has the best rhetoric, which is another appeal to end the conversation. If it ever was a conversation to begin with as well, there's another appeal to dialogue. That's probably what I would give to Michelle in that instance, is that this appeal to dialogue. It ended the world. Like, that's what it.
Right.
It ended the Western world, you could say.
I really enjoyed the beginning of your guys' conversation about showing that the appeal to the authority of education or information is vastly different than the appeal to, on one hand, it's authority, but I think it's competence. I think the appeal to information as such takes you away from appeal to confidence, competence, which is what genuine leadership, or at least just the willingness to accountability, the willingness to make the strides and take the failure is. And so when you appeal to just learning and just education, you're appealing to something that is non-generative. It's a neutered,
It's a
dry
fantasy.
entity.
It's a
Leadership
fantasy.
generates more leadership. Information doesn't.
Right. Information doesn't generate anything
No.
at all. It cannot generate anything. That's the problem. Information cannot generate anything. You can use information to generate things. That's not the same. That's the symmetry problem again, right? The fact that you could use information and the problem is we get it backwards, right? The greatest scientist that ever lived is Thomas Edison, and he was not educated. Therefore, education and science have nothing to do with one another.
So the information thing is exactly like that land thing that you showed. You can give information and knowledge to good leadership, and they can use it, but information and knowledge does not cause good leadership or cause competence or confident. Like, it doesn't cause any of that. And it's just like the land thing where you can give wealth, you can give location.
And it's not required.
Right.
You can be a good leader without information. Like, it's not a requirement. It's a nice to have, but it's not required.
Boggled me about that location because humans almost definitively as a species are the creature that affect climate and location. We can live at 70 degrees in a swamp or in Siberia or on the equator or in the Sahara. We affect climate.
Right.
That's like our thing. Right. And so, like, if we just give
one instance though, we can't live there unless we take responsibility to live there. Mm-hmm. That's what wins. Mm-hmm. So you can not be the head leader, but you can be our leader if you're taking responsibility.
You don't even.
So you have to respond. No, you have to respond to the circumstance that you're in. That's the problem we're in. That's the incompetence, is people lacking to be integrated.
You don't even have to be a leader to take responsibility and competence. You just have to be willing to acknowledge where you are presently and help.
And respond. Responsibility is a response.
Like, you can be a totally responsible lowest guy on the totem pole and just not throw cups on the sidewalk. Like, if that's your only lot in life, is like, oh, you're just a pleb and you just serve up some fries and you just don't throw your garbage on the asphalt. Thank you. You have saved the world right there, because that's it. That's all you had to do. That's what we needed from your particular level. Any day you decide to try and find a new level, cool. But until then, please just don't litter.
Like, a lot of people think you can find a level, and that's the misunderstanding of Plato's
it's always
Cave.
Moving.
Well, it doesn't. It's not always moving sometimes, but it doesn't matter. Like, it's not optional. Plato's Cave, the actual Plato's Cave in the book, in the Republic, for real, is the statement that you don't choose your level and you can't change levels. It's actually what it says. That's the whole point of Plato's Cave, is that you don't get freed from the cave. That never happens. Plato says it cannot happen. It actually says that. He uses that as an example to say classes exist and you're stuck at your class. And when the philosopher comes down from his, experience towards goodness or whatever, which we have to make him do that. We have to. When that happens, he will be chided because he came down and said, this, and this are wrong. The thing is, he has to do that, and he has to be chided because it makes the city better. He doesn't do it for himself. He doesn't even do it for the plebs. He does it because it's better for the city. It's a sacrifice. It's a responsibility. He's responding to the bad things he sees. And in the cave, in the parable says the opposite of what everybody's telling you. Actually, that video is still coming. I promise. I'm halfway done. I just got to get all the references done.
Another insert here is sometimes we conflate decision-making with leadership, right? And what I was trying to say is leadership is multi-scaled.
Yeah.
You might not be the top decision maker. That does not make you any less of a leader.
Right.
Or example, because that's what. Yeah.
Sorry.
Take responsibility for baby Kitty. So.
Yeah. Such a brat right now.
You're gonna be a brat? He is a brat. I want to address this. Gymnasiums. One apple seed to infinity means it does incest. No, that's not what it means. That's bad.
Well, I didn't say without any pollen. I wasn't
Right.
thinking about the pollen specifically. You got
Well, but
me.
also,
You got me.
there are things that asexually reproduce, but that you wouldn't consider that incest. That's just a misunderstanding of how the world works. And like, fine, it's fair. Like, very few people understand.
I mean, I'm
Please,
also a
Harold.
witch tonight, Mark, so that's okay. I'm fine with it. It's cool. It's like, oh no, opinions from the internet.
Yeah. I know. Well, and the thing is, like, people think they understand the definitions of words, and like, actually, you probably don't really understand what that means. And
Did you mean a threatening woman? Thank you. I resemble that remark.
Oh, do you mean if you change the language, you change the culture? Because that's where I started with.
Yeah, well, you certainly can, and that's part of the breakdown of language. I mean, I think it's accidental. Yeah, I think the two are related, right? Like, we're having a fight over words and meaning.
It might be fundamental though, if you take a biblical worldview, which is that if you stop calling things by their proper name,
right?
you change your relationship and responsibility to that thing.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. No, that has to be true. Yeah, everybody talks about truth, and I'm like, the implication is that there's a true language, and that when you're not using true language, everything breaks down into chaos. That looks a lot like a culture war. Then there's postmodernism, which looks like a lot it would cause a culture war. I don't know what else to take. Like, this stuff is so obvious to me. It's bright like the sun, and the rest of you are like just catching up. I'm just saying. You know, and imagine all people that are really following us. It's like, man, you guys are really behind. It's hard. This stuff is hard. People don't see it because they don't want to. Like, nobody wants to believe that Sam Harris doesn't have a point and it takes 10 seconds and one simple sentence. Nobody wants to believe that all these people are saying 2 + 2 = 4 is bullshit. And it takes literally 4 apples to prove them wrong. Or 4
I don't know why I want to share this, because I don't know how it fits in this conversation, and I tried to shake it by thinking about it for 2 minutes, and it's not shook. So the Peterson story about the cafes, I don't know why it's not like one of the most popular stories ever, but it's in his old videos from when he was teaching, and I think he's got this story about these 2 cafes, and they're just ordinary cafes. And one of the cafes is clean, is optimal, everything is good, the lights don't flicker, the service is nice, and it's heaven. One cafe is heaven. It's just an ordinary cafe. It is like an ordinary roadside cafe, but everybody cared, everybody's doing their thing, everything's working, and it's heaven. And just a little bit down the road is the next cafe, and it's hell. The tables are sticky, the waiters are angry, the cook doesn't care, like, and it's and that is so quintessential to me of like, it's like the difference between like a teapot that pours and a teapot that spills every time it pours, or like just cleaning your sink every night versus not. And I think people hear the word leadership or authority or competence, and they get like thinking about that 1,000 miles away on the top of a tower as a blinking light that directs planes, and they don't see how that's their front porch light bulb working properly.
Right.
Like,
well,
and that's the degradation of the world. And it's like, you don't have to lead airplanes. You can
that was my point, right? Like,
okay,
you can't take down the structures. That's not better, right? You need to recognize the bad parts of the structure or the bad people in the structure and replace them with good people. That's the only option. There is no other option, because all other options are evil wins. And I'm still not a fan of evil, just in case anybody's curious. Have not changed my position on evil even a little bit ever. Not going to. Just I suppose it's possible, right?
You're not going to go with admitting it exists makes you more evil than the people that won't admit it exists.
Yeah. Right. Evil's everywhere, and like now it's like Satan's just walking around like going, "Hey man, what's up?" And everyone's like not
in
recognizing
shorts. He's walking around in shorts.
in shorts and a t-shirt going, "Dude, surf's up, man." He's a dirty, smelly hippie that looks a lot like the old long-haired Jesus people. Yep, he's just and he doesn't look like that. But that's what we see. And it's like, no, dude, literal horns and pointed tail. Like, I don't even. Yeah. And we don't, we're just not paying attention. Like, the number of times I have to tell people, no, really, this person did this before they get it. It's like, no, just look. It's not a trick. It's right there in front of you. It's actual. Like, there's bad people. People just flat out lie about things.
Are we calling it?
I think so. Sal, you want to give us your wrap up thoughts?
I think I did with the cafe. Like, don't be evil. Change your light bulbs. Stuff like that.
Take responsibility. In other words, respond to the world around you. Yeah. Well, then we should do a good cafe, bad cafe video. That's not exactly what Peterson said, by the way, but it's right up the spirit. I like his description of how the eggs. That is the best.
Well, yeah, I don't remember it exactly because I have high def brain and it
the crazy artist creative doesn't remember things exactly.
The fact that I remember it at all from like 2017 is freaking a miracle. So
I agree. Well, we should take on that project and actually do a good cafe, bad cafe narrative, the two of us in a video. That'd be fun. We haven't done a video together in a while, Sally. So that'll be good.
That's true. I'm behind on all of my videos.
I know.
My new rendition of my blind people story that I need to do with Herb, I guess, because I don't know. Or the assassination of Herb. I need to do that whole series.
Yeah, you'll get there. All right, Jesse, what you got for wrap up for us?
Participate. End of sentence.
I like it.
Yeah, you can't not participate. So
be responsible. You can't, right? And so you have to do it well. You have no choice. That's the responsibility. Well said. I like that. Yeah, and look, in a way, it is a culture war, but it's a war for a culture or to have no culture. And you can be upset about the culture you had and the flaws you allegedly saw in it and how smart you are that you saw all those flaws that maybe you're wrong about, by the way. But you don't really have a choice. You still have to make that better instead of making it not exist or tearing it down and hoping that something better will exist or listening to somebody else who has a better idea about how to do it, because the odds that they're right are actually zero. Actually, they're not right. And that's what we have to be mindful of. And look, I think, we'll have stream next week. That will happen. After that, we're up in the air, but I will let you know. Let me know what you think in the comments, and have a great week. I will talk to you all later. Leave comments, leave likes, leave subscribes, tell your friends.
The world needs you to be better. Sorry, stealing it from you.
So you can't do that, Jesse. You have to do it this way. To say the world needs you to be better. And we have another one with be responsible, right? Or respond better. Both good. Have a good week, everybody. See you next week. We'll come up with a new topic. And don't feel like you're embroiled in the culture war. Just make things better.